abortion pill could mean for Massachusetts.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Got a question you'd like to put in front of Maura Healey? Call us or text us 877-301-8970 or the radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Officials in Maryland remain at the scene of a catastrophic disaster. Much of a major interstate bridge in Baltimore has collapsed into a river beneath it. A cargo ship collided with one of the bridge's supports overnight. Maryland Transportation Secretary Paul Wiedefeld says searchers are still looking for 6 people who were working on the bridge when it collapsed.
The crew that was out there working was basically repairing potholes. Just so you understand, that had nothing to do with a structural issue at all in the facility. At this time, one person has been rescued, and so far, and our efforts continue in terms of that.
A second person was also rescued. Maryland's governor says the crew of the cargo ship notified authorities they had a power issue with the vessel before the collision. The FBI says there is no information to suggest any ties to terrorism at this time. President Biden and Vice President Harris are taking their re-election campaign to North Carolina today. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports it's a state won by Donald Trump in the 2020 election.
The trip to Raleigh, North Carolina is part of the Biden campaign's efforts in southern battleground states. The Democratic presidential candidate has not won North Carolina since 2008. But Biden supporters see an opportunity to mobilize centrist and liberal voters in the state, where Republicans recently nominated a candidate for governor who has made anti-Semitic comments and supports banning abortion. In North Carolina, the campaign says President Biden will capitalize on the, quote, sharp contrast between his record and that of former President Donald Trump. Biden's expected to highlight his work on voting rights. His administration scored a legal victory in North Carolina that blocked the state from implementing more restrictive verification requirements for voters. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
A Russian court has again extended the detention of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich by another 3 months. That's until the end of June. NPR's Charles Maines reports from Moscow. The court's decision comes nearly a year to the day the U.S. journalist was detained by Russian security forces on spying allegations.
Gershkovich was detained while on a reporting assignment in Russia's Ural Mountains in March of last year and later accused of trying to obtain state secrets. Gershkovich, the journal, and the U.S. government all vehemently reject the spying allegations, noting he was working in Russia with official press accreditation from the foreign ministry. In a statement, U.S. Ambassador to Russia Lynn Tracy called the latest extension particularly painful, noting Gershkovich had now spent a year in jail on fictional charges and accused Russia of holding Americans as pawns for political aims. The Biden administration says it's made several prisoner swap offers to secure Gershkovich's release, only to see them rejected by the Kremlin. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up more than 100 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. For the second year in a row, white supremacist propaganda incidents in Massachusetts have broken a new record. That's according to a new report that was released this morning by the Anti-Defamation League. GBH's Philip Martin has more.
Each year, ADL releases national data showing the number of incidents in which white supremacists target Jews, black folk, LGBTQ communities, Muslims, and others with propaganda and hateful messaging. In 2023, according to ADL, there was a 30% increase in anti-Semitic messaging, which was amplified following the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. In Massachusetts, much of the hate speech, online, on banners, and on paper, was largely tied to the activities of the neo-Nazi Patriot Front, NSC 131, and the Aryan Circle, a prison gang with strong tentacles on the outside. Philip Martin, GBH 89.7.
On Beacon Hill, the Senate plans to take up 2 bills when it meets on Thursday, one that would tweak debt collection practices in the state and another that would regulate so-called hot work, which are jobs that involve welding and other fiery practices. This one comes after a welding spark ignited a fire that killed 2 firefighters in the Back Bay about 10 years ago. In sports, the Brewers are in Florida tonight. Exhibition baseball. Red Sox play the Rangers today. In the forecast, we've got clouds, rain rolling through this afternoon. 40 degrees will be the high. Cloudy and 40 overnight. Cloudy and 55 tomorrow. Rain, low 50s on Thursday and Friday. But Easter weekend looks nice with lots of sunshine.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Kresge Foundation. Established 100 years ago, the Kresge Foundation works to expand equity and opportunity in cities across America. A century of impact, a future of opportunity. More at Kresge.org.
I'm Henry Santoro. Time now for Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library.
I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention we are here an extra day now. We're going to be back here tomorrow as well as on Friday. No tickets or RSVP. Just show up and stay as little as long as you like. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We're now joined at the desk by the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey, for Ask the Governor. If you have a question for the Governor, you can call or text it in at 877-301-8970, or better yet, come down to the BPL and ask her a question yourself. Our colleague Hannah, right there, will be happy to give you a thing to fill out and whatever. Governor Healey, it's good to see you.
Hey, great to see you.
Thanks
Good morning.
for being here.
Thank you very much, Governor Healey, for taking the time to be with us. So, as you know, the Supreme Court today is hearing oral arguments on mifepristone case. It's one of the drugs that can induce an abortion. What does this mean for us here, where abortion is still legal?
Well, obviously, we'll see how the arguments go and what the court decides. But I'll say this. Access to mifepristone is critical. It's why I, in the wake of the Dobbs decision, made a decision to stockpile mifepristone here. We have mifepristone on supply. It will continue to be available in this state. But I think what we are seeing is just a continued attack by state legislatures and by the Supreme Court on reproductive freedom. And this is terrible. It's terrible for women. It's worse for women who are poor, low income, and women of color. And the threat right now to reproductive freedom is very real, and we see that on display right now in hearings before the Supreme Court. There's the issue of reproductive freedom, which is incredibly important. There's also the issue in this case about science and the role of the FDA. Massachusetts, we're the global hub for life sciences. So decisions by the Supreme Court on the a prerogative of the FDA, for example, also potentially undermine our ability to be the leader that we are in Massachusetts when it comes to life sciences and the work that is done. So it's a terrible situation. We are going to continue to make sure that in Massachusetts, I as governor will do everything to protect patients, to protect providers. We've seen an increase in the numbers of people traveling to Massachusetts for abortion care, as we've seen state by state take that access away. We are going to continue to do everything we can to protect patients, to protect providers, protect access to MIFI, and protect reproductive freedom. It's also the case and a reason why Massachusetts was just voted the #1 state to live in if you're a woman, because these are the very kinds of protections and rights and access that we provide, along with child care and pay equity and so many other things.
You know, I know you say we'll do everything to protect. You said that after the Dobbs decision, too, and I'm sure you mean it. But if there's an anti-choice decision from the Supreme Court on mifepristone, my understanding is it covers us as well. And I know you've stockpiled whatever it is, 15,000 doses, but at some point they run out. So if the Supreme Court goes rogue yet again on reproductive freedom, we're in bad shape here, too.
Well, we'll have to see what the Supreme Court does, but certainly it puts at risk access to mifepristone and would force...
Here as well, just to be clear.
It does put us at risk here as well, and this is why it's so important that the Supreme Court rule the right way, and why I will exhaust every single avenue and opportunity to make sure that people have access to mifepristone, access to abortion. But the reality in the unfortunate, most unfortunate situation we are in is that this threat is real. We see it every single day. It's also why November and the election matters, because this is a Supreme Court that was designed and constructed by Donald Trump. And people need to remember that as we face the next 6 months.
You know, one last thing. I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you did, I know I speak for Marjorie, our view is that the majority of this court is in the tank to Donald Trump. When they decide something will help him, like overruling the Colorado decision about disqualification, they speed it. When there's something that's unlikely to help him, like the immunity thing, they don't even schedule oral argument until April 22nd. Do you share that perspective?
I do. It's well, in the tank, I mean, I would hope that these justices do their job and fulfill their constitutional obligation and be true to the oath that they swore to uphold, right? I mean, that is my hope. But it's certainly been the case that we've seen case after case where there have been real issues with what the Supreme Court has decided. This is the court that took away and overturned precedent, Roe versus Wade, after so many years, and that was just the start of further evisceration and attempts to undermine women's rights in this country. And so we as states, you know, it really matters in our states what we're doing, how we're leading, how we're protecting our residents, in this case, how we're protecting women, how we're protecting access to health care. And that's why I've said from the beginning that I'll do everything that I can. And I think that we have as a state, and we are going to continue to protect patients and providers.
One last question before we get to the calls. We all saw the video of the horrible collapse of that bridge in Baltimore, and I'm hoping that it was aberrational because obviously the ship hit it. But we also know, we read every year about how many substandard bridges we have in our own state. What's your reaction to what happened, and how concerned should we be here?
It's absolutely devastating and heartbreaking. I was actually supposed to be meeting with Governor Moore this morning, and he had to fly back in the middle of the night to attend to this. And I've been in touch with him. I've offered our support as a state to Maryland and to Baltimore. My thoughts are with all of the victims and survivors, all those affected by this tragedy. Huge kudos to the first responders, men and women who are in the water right now and in the air looking for survivors in what is becoming a recovery effort at this point. There are a few things that I will note. Number one, we continue to inspect our bridges here in Massachusetts. The Tobin was inspected, for example, as recently as a couple of months ago. Number two, Massachusetts does not have the same kind of cargo traffic that they have through the Port of Baltimore. We used to, but in recent years that has changed, and much of it is happening with cargo coming into Massachusetts, but not having to pass under bridges. Number three, it's important that we be proactive here, and when I leave you, I will be returning to my office where I'm convening with the Coast Guard, MassDOT, which is DOT, Department of Transportation, Massport, as well as Mass Maritime, which we're really lucky to have Mass Maritime here in Massachusetts. Many of the men and women who operate those ships and do that work were trained at Mass Maritime, and so we'll have the benefit of speaking and hearing from the Admiral as well. But I want to make sure that we're having a conversation to make sure that all of our protocols are where they need to be, and that we are doing everything that we can to ensure the safety of our ports and our bridges.
So, voice of
Our number is 877-301-8970. The governor's going to be with us till a little bit before noontime. You can call her or text her at that number. That is, of course, Maura Healey. We're speaking with Jerome from Dorchester. You're on with the governor. Hi.
Hey, Jerome.
Hi, Governor. I'm with XR Boston, and I have a question about climate. You recently appointed a youth climate council, and you're going to be appearing at their Earth Day event. I was wondering if you plan on implementing any of the recommendations that they put forth.
I'm so excited about our Youth Council on Climate. As you know, this is a space we've been really active in, appointing the country's first climate chief, who was recently profiled, and we've been out with a number of initiatives in just the last 14 months alone, including making sure that voices of young people are represented in policy making and decision making. It's also why I included in our economic development bill a proposal to make Massachusetts the hub of climate tech, a $1 billion proposal to lean into climate tech. I think that we can have the effect on climate tech here in Massachusetts that we've had on life sciences. So much of the innovation, the technology, the research and development that is helping us power away from fossil fuels to renewables is happening right here in Massachusetts. And we need to seize that opportunity. It's a great opportunity for us to really advance and own this critically important sector.
Thank you, Jerome, very much for your call.
You know, Governor, there's been some confusion about what's going on with this month limit on people that are staying in overflow shelters in Massachusetts. What's going on?
Well, I've said for a long time that we're at capacity and that we simply cannot sustainably continue to house the numbers that we're seeing come into Massachusetts. I commend all of our partners in government, outside of government, and community, the faith community, and service providers who have worked to house our new arrivals and migrant families here. I also have stressed the importance of work authorizations. I'm proud of the work that we've done to have over 3,000 people processed at this point for work authorizations. They've received permits, or are in the process of receiving permits and getting plugged in with employers to fill needed jobs. But I continue to call on Congress to act. And, you know, it is outrageous that we as states are having to bear the burden of this, bear the cost, bear the strain, simply because Congress has failed to act. What I did yesterday is announce that when it comes to these overflow sites, and we have a few of them, that we are going to require people, families, to certify that after 30 days, they've fulfilled the requirements that we ask of them if they're coming into the system. Specifically, that they engage with case managers, they seek ESL lessons, they seek work, including applications for work authorizations. We need to have these kinds of requirements imposed and guardrails so that we're more quickly able to get people on the right track and hopefully, Marjorie, diverted from longer-term emergency shelter stays, which, as you know, are already above capacity. I put a cap on that a while back at 7,500. It remains the case that approximately 55% of the families who are in our emergency shelter system statewide are Massachusetts families. But 45% are now, and increasing, are now migrant families. So we've got to find a way to deal with this capacity constraint, which is also a fiscal restraint. Which is why you also heard yesterday the Senate President, the Speaker, and I speak in a unified way about the need to bring some constraints around this, because we continue to face the situation that we're getting zero relief from the federal government, we're getting zero relief from Congress, and so we have to find a way to navigate this here.
Just one thing I don't understand, though, if you are not in the country with papers or you're here illegally, and some people cannot work. Isn't that one of the big problems here?
We're talking about people here who are migrants mostly right now, who are in our overflow sites, which is different from the emergency shelter operations, the 7,500 families around the state. We're talking about people who we've got in overflow sites. They are mostly migrant families. The migrants
who
are
can
here.
Work.
Well, they can, because they were lawfully allowed into the country by the federal government, which has been my cry from the beginning. If you're allowing people in lawfully, legally, then let them work. And we did get the Biden administration to come and work with us on the ground to process 3,000 people plus for work authorizations to get them into jobs that need to be filled and on to self-sufficiency.
We're talking to the Governor of the Commonwealth, and you are talking to her too for the rest of this hour. 877, well, the lines are full, but you can text 877-301-8970. Before we take the next call, let's go to what I'm sure is your favorite topic, Puerto Rico. If we can, for a second. A couple of things, Governor. On Monday, I think I have the days right, but I may be off a day or two. On Monday, you said your private life is your private life, and you won't disclose in certain circumstances where you've been even after the fact. On Friday, you changed your position, and you did disclose that your partner had taken you to Puerto Rico for your birthday for 4 days. That's one question. What changed? That's one. And two, I think the first show you were with us as governor, you talked about how you'd be the most transparent governor. In that trip, not only did we not know after the fact where you went, we didn't know until the Secretary of State said he was the acting governor that you were even out of state. Isn't that the minimum thing that the people of the Commonwealth should be entitled to know if their governor or the lieutenant governor or the Secretary of State is running the show?
Well, Jim, what I've said from the beginning is that I'll work to provide as much information as possible, balancing the needs of security and privacy, which are very real in this day and age. I have said, and I have kept up with producing my calendar each month, which is something that I don't believe any other governor has done. So that's more transparency. I've also said, though, when it comes to out-of-state travel for work, and I am taking out-of-state trips to D.C., meetings with other governors and the like, to do the work that a governor needs to do, that I will disclose that after. And that is for security reasons. And certainly I'll do that for personal travel. I honestly, it was really nice. My girlfriend took me away for my birthday for the weekend. I didn't think it was a big deal because, we have that covered in terms of the running of the government, and I'm obviously always working no matter where I am. But, I basically just decided that I didn't want there to be any more further concern about, where I was. I did get to go to Puerto Rico for a couple days. That was very lovely. It was the first time we've been away and since I became governor alone together. So that was nice. But going forward, to be clear, I'll make sure that people know where I've been once I return.
But let me be clear, but going forward as well, when you leave the state, when you're leaving the state, will we know that you're not here and that somebody else is in charge?
You'll know after the fact.
After the fact.
Yep. Which is consistent with the way a number of governors operate and appropriate in terms of what I've been advised in terms of security. So people will know, and trust me, no matter where I am working to make sure that things are where they need to be in our state.
Governor, I know there were a few times when people were protesting outside Charlie Baker's house up in Scituate, and I know you've had these white supremacist neo-Nazi people. They were just there briefly when you were in Puerto Rico. So is your sense from the state cops or whoever advises you on this that the security issues you're facing are more dire, either because we are getting very popular with these neo-Nazi groups, and also you're the first openly gay governor? Either of those things factor into the security concerns of your security people?
I'm not going to talk about the specifics of my security because of security, but I think that people know it's just a day and age where I think any of us in these positions, as you look around the country, it's responsible to take whatever steps are necessary.
We're talking to the governor of the Commonwealth, and James in Uxbridge. You are now talking to the governor of the Commonwealth. Hey there, James.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Marjorie. Good morning, Governor. How are you all?
Good.
Fine, thanks.
Hi, James.
So my wife, Rebecca, and I recently became grandparents for the first time.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Vivian is very healthy. Her mother is searching the family child care database online at the early childhood pages. And she was surprised to learn that gun ownership is not a mandatory part of the listing. She has to voluntarily uncover that with the providers. So I'm wondering, is that a change that could be made to the online listings?
Well, James, first off, congratulations to you and to your family on baby Vivian. That's awesome. And second, I'd have to look into that. I'm not sure about it. But I will say this: childcare is a huge issue, and it's why we've made investments and will continue to make investments in childcare and make sure that we are doing all that we can. We just proposed last year and got in the budget, and we proposed once again historic levels of funding in childcare, which we know is desperately needed in Uxbridge and around the state. But thanks for the call, James. I'll follow up with the team.
James, speaking of, thank you for the call. Speaking of follow-up and speaking of transparency, I see the person at the mic we actually met a few weeks ago, David Scott, is here with his son, Michael. David was one of the people featured in a story, Governor, just to give you some background, by our colleague, Jennifer Moore, who reported on loved ones having people who lived and died in state institutions for people with disabilities and how impossible it is to get family records. And if I remember correctly, David, please correct me if I'm wrong, your brother had spina bifida as a baby, was taken away to Fernald. 51 years later, he died, and then 51 years later, now, you're still unable to get records. So whatever you have for the governor, please share it. David Scott.
Well, first of all, good morning, Governor, and thank you for listening to my concerns.
Good morning, David.
I am trying to gain the records for my brother. I was 7 years old when he passed away. You know of the atrocities that occurred at that school and, you know, what my parents had to endure by having him taken away. And the whole thing is just, it's really affected me, especially with my son, being born with cerebral palsy himself. It's really empowered me even more now in this day and age to try to do more about it. And every time I try to gain access through his records, through Galvin's office, through anybody, they slam the door in my face. They tell me no. Those records were left in that school when they closed for all the vandals to get a hold about. The vandals know more about my brother than I do. The state lags behind. We are last in the whole country for opening records like that. Last.
What's your question, David, for the governor, if I may?
Would you please, I understand that you have the power to sign an executive order to have these records open. And I ask you to please, for my brother and for a lot of other families' sake, to please, it has to go through you. That's the only way this is going to get done, Governor, honestly. And in your heart, I believe you will do it. And when you do, I would ask you if you could name a John's Law in memory of my brother.
Thank you, David. And I'll promise you this. I'm going to look into it, and whatever I can do, I understand we're talking about events that happened a long, long time ago, and it doesn't make sense to me that we wouldn't make that available, whoever the we is. Because honestly, there's been some discussion there about, state, city, what have you, right? So let's do this. Let's sit down and talk together offline with my team, David, and see what we can do, because I want you to have closure. I want you to have peace, both in John's memory and in for your own self and your son, who I'm looking at. What's his name?
Michael.
Michael. Hi, Michael. So let's do that, okay?
Appreciate it, and I think you're doing a great job. I know you have a lot of things to balance, and I think you're doing a great job.
Well, appreciate it. Thank you,
You're
David.
welcome.
And David,
Thank you.
David, you're doing a great job too, by the way. Michael and David, it's really good to see you both.
I
Thank
just
you.
had Charlie Baker in
Thank you.
Steward. I don't know why I said that. He was in Swampscott, not Steward. A lot of people are asking about this bridge incident, and it was a ship that hit the pilings of the bridge. It was, I hope, a unique situation, not to do with the structure of the bridge. But a lot of people are asking. You mentioned the Tobin Bridge having been inspected a couple of months ago. What is the deal about inspecting bridges? Is it just a regular thing, and how regular?
It's a regularly occurring thing that our bridges are inspected. And as I said, the Tobin was inspected a couple of months ago. If on inspection we identify any issues, we would work hard to take care of that. And we'll continue to do that. We're going to learn more about what happened in Baltimore. It's devastating. It's shocking. I mean, we've all seen the image now of the immediate collapse on impact that ship had. And so, we'll learn more about it. I know it's high tide, which in full moon, and we don't know if there was a mechanical issue. And remember, these are massive.
Massive.
So even if you lose power, like the momentum of these massive ships, you're not going to be able to control that. But we don't know what happened, but it's devastating. It's devastating for Baltimore. It's devastating for Maryland. And certainly we want to make sure that we have the very best protocols in place. Our inspections are up to date. And as I say, if we identify any issues, we're going to address them. I will say, when you think about bridges, Cape Cod bridges have been the subject of a lot of discussion, and it's why I set up that federal funds office, and we've been really chasing federal dollars to get those Cape Cod bridges to where they need to be, and they need to be replaced. And to me, it just underscores how important that is. We've recently had success, and we're hopeful that in terms of getting money for the Cape Cod bridges.
350? Is that 350 or
Well,
something?
most recently is 350 from the Army Corps. We got close to another $400 million the other day in a federal grant towards this, and we're waiting on an application for about $1 billion for the rest of that, and that's really important. But it's why I've been focused on this. It's why because infrastructure, state of good repair, it's really, really important, and we just haven't done it for too long.
I know I'm speaking for Marjorie. Every time we drive over the Sagamore Bridge, we're a little nervous. Are you? Truthfully.
No, I mean, it is, I'll tell you, Sagamore Bridge has been inspected, and it has been labeled structurally deficient, which is why we want the bridges replaced. That said, structurally deficient doesn't mean unsafe, because what happens is when there is that designation, there was work immediately done to ensure safe passage. But it doesn't take away from the fact that we actually need to have these bridges replaced. And our strategy this year was to go hard after first the Sagamore Bridge replacement. We've had success in receiving grants towards that, and also through the budget, and we're going to continue to pursue that work.
Before we take a 1-minute break, I can't believe I'm asking you this question, but are you contemplating following the lead of Ron DeSantis on one thing in particular? DeSantis, I know he's one of your favorite governors, and ours, I should say. He recently signed a bill that bans under 14-year-olds from social media. 14 and 15-year-olds need parental consent. And I remember, I hope I get this right, I remember talking to you, actually, as Attorney General a couple of years ago, when you were concerned, maybe it was after that Frances, whatever her name was, from Facebook testified in front of Congress about the mental and physical harm that a lot of these social media platforms do, particularly young girls and women. Is something like that on your radar, like the DeSantis thing?
Well, I'll tell you, the reason that I opened, as Attorney General, an investigation into social media companies. We joined together other AGs, actually Democrat and Republican, is we opened this investigation. It is ongoing through the efforts of AG Campbell and her office, is because social media, we know, has demonstrable harm for our young people. The addictive nature of it, the mental health issues that it creates, it's documented now, it's well known, and we need to take action. Whether legislation is the appropriate course, I'm not sure. I see the talk about banning TikTok and the like. I just really would hope and encourage that just culturally as a society that we could back up parents, that we could back up our young people who actually, if you talk to many of them, they don't want to be so tied to their phones. But they feel like if they're not tied to their phones, they're missing out. Everyone else is doing it, and no kid wants to feel that way. But this stuff is bad, and I always am struck, Jim, by the fact that you listen to the interviews of all the tech founders and entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, the people who actually build this stuff, and they say they don't let their children use social media. So why should ours be harmed or hurt by it? It just really is galling to me.
So is that at least a possibility here?
I don't know. As I say, I think it's about, in the first instance, let's educate, let's try to change the culture around some of this, and I'm open to, I'm open to whatever policy changes makes sense in this space.
That's the voice of Governor Maura Healey. She'll be with us till the top of the hour. You're listening to 89.7 GBH.
It's bad for adults, too, sometimes. Right?
Yes.
Who isn't out there checking their phone?
Constant.
And, right? So we could all do a better job.
Yeah, we're setting a bad example. Anyway, if you want to try to reach the governor, the phone number, 877-301-8970. That's the number to text or call. We'll try to get to as many as we can before the top of the hour. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The Islamic State claimed responsibility for a massacre in a Moscow concert hall Friday, killing at least 130 people and injuring more than 180 others. U.S. intelligence agrees the terror group was behind the attack, why ISIS went after Russian civilians, plus more of the day's global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst, dedicated to generating new knowledge and applying discoveries to the betterment of society. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu. And the Bach Center, presenting Rain, a tribute to the Beatles, a concert experience celebrating the timeless music of the legendary Fab Four, April 12th and 13th at the Wang Theater. Tickets and more at bachcenter.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday. And with us for the rest of the hour is the Governor of the Commonwealth to take your questions and calls. Phone lines are full, but texts are always open, 877-301-8970.
Governor, under the Baker administration, he pushed this idea that housing around T-stops, zoning needed to be changed so that it would enable cities and towns to build more housing to ease the housing crunch. What's happening with the MBTA, so-called Commuter Act, and arguments aren't going to be heard until the fall, I think. So what is the latest? And what's happening with Milton?
Well, here's what's happening. Housing is the number one issue for our state. I don't know, everybody listening, I'm sure, has a story to tell about housing. You've got kids who are back living with you because they can't afford rent, they can't afford to buy a place. We have people who are seniors who can't afford to downsize right now because they can't afford another home in Massachusetts, and that's lousy, especially for grandparents who want to remain close to their grandkids. We've got employers who can't expand here, or other companies who won't come here because they can't recruit talent because the cost of housing. This is real stuff. I gave a speech a couple weeks ago. An executive search firm came up to me after, they're in the life sciences space, and they said, Governor, I'm so glad you talked about housing because it is the number one issue we hear about. And if you can't find housing for people earning six figures, that's a problem. It hurts us competitively. So that's why I went big with a housing bond bill, $4 billion to incent housing development statewide. There's also the MBTA Communities Act, which was a law passed nearly unanimously a few years ago, signed into law by Governor Baker, that basically says to communities around transit hubs, you need to rezone to allow for more housing and multifamily housing. And the good news is nearly all of the communities subject to that law have complied. Of course, we ran into an issue recently with Milton, and now that's the subject of litigation. Our administration is going to continue to work with Milton on its plan to comply. But in the meantime, we're going ahead and we're working with other communities who understand this, that more housing is good for their communities. It's good for building vibrancy and for economic growth and development in our state. And it's something that we absolutely have to do. All communities can benefit, and no one single city or town in Massachusetts, in our great state, is going to be able to solve the housing crisis, the housing challenge. We all have to work together.
So are you guys, I mean, with this oral argument, or whatever it is, not till the fall, which another example, I would argue the court should move more expeditiously, but are you talking to Milton? I mean, their selectmen approved this. It was only the citizenry that, not only, it was the citizenry that said no. Are there discussions going on to see if
absolutely. So the Attorney General has filed suit. That case will proceed later. Separately, our administration continues to work with Milton. We actually gave them $60,000 in funding to work through some of the technical issues on their plan so that they could get to a place that satisfied everybody in town. We're going to continue to be at the table, working with Milton, working with other communities. We need housing in this state. Jim, the numbers are real. It's estimated that we are short 200,000 housing units in this state. That is so much housing that we're down, which is why we need to do things like allow communities to have accessory dwelling units, use garages, use attached buildings.
That's your granny flat, Marjorie.
I wasn't going to say granny flat.
That's where I'm going.
This is a surefire way, proven around the country.
Yes.
To increase housing units overnight. And so, everything's got to be on the table. We really need to come together. We really need to get this done. And we really need this affordable homes bond bill to pass.
Two quick things. One, are you convinced that, are you worried, I should say first, that other communities are going to use this time while the case is pending before the state's highest court and opt out themselves? And number two, are you convinced the legislature, which often doesn't complete its work before its 5-month vacation, are you convinced you're going to get a vote on this before July?
Well, I certainly hope that we don't see communities try to fight this. As I say, the good news is nearly all communities have complied because I think they understand the imperative here. Also, certainly we're going to continue to work with the legislature to try to get something done, knowing how important it is. I also just want to say there's been a lot of misinformation about this MBTA Communities Act. It doesn't actually require you to build.
Yes,
There's nothing
that's
to be, there's no, this idea that you're going to see huge increases in student population and what have you, no. That's not what's happening here with the MBTA Communities Act. And again, I didn't author it, I didn't sign it, I support it. It just requires rezoning, right? Let's go look at our communities. How can we rezone so that there's more housing? For those who care about climate, it's a good thing to have more housing located next to transit hubs so that people don't actually have to drive to work, right? It's a good thing if you can have a population back in your city or town that's going to contribute to economic growth and development. And I'm just telling you, the reality is, the reason that people are locating to other places, again, listeners out there know this from their own lives, is because of the high cost of housing. That shouldn't be a reason people leave our great state.
Okay, Christina in Dorchester. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention one
quick.
thing that's such
Sure.
interest in this bridge. The New York Times just reporting that that cargo ship lost power, sent a Mayday call, and workers were trying to stop traffic before people went over the bridge, but it obviously didn't stop at all.
Christina in Dorchester, you're on with Governor Healey. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Sure, yes.
Hi. So my question relates to the recent appointment of Melissa Lavinston to oversee the decarbonization of communities across Massachusetts. And my question is really related to the idea of consistent policy for decarbonization. And specifically, I'm curious about how this new appointment is consistent with the fact that the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection is currently allowing the expansion of gas pipelines and related infrastructure in Massachusetts, and particularly Project Maple and the Weymouth Compressor Station, whose sole purpose is to make frack gas from Pennsylvania possible to export to other countries and not even be used in Massachusetts.
Christina,
and I understand that children...
We need a question, Christina. We need a question for the governor.
So children in Weymouth and Quincy are breathing carcinogens emitted by the compressor station. And if current environmental justice
We need a
laws
question,
apply
Christina.
to
I'm sorry. We just don't have time for a statement. We need a question, please.
allowed to operate. So my question is, how is this really consistent with your pro-energy transition stance when you're allowing Project Maple pipeline expansion and the compressor station to continue to operate?
We got it, Christina. Thank you.
In terms of the Weymouth compressor, and I know it's come up again and again for your listening audience, that matter remains on appeal. Let me tell you where we are with the clean energy revolution. There's a reason I went big on our economic development bill. I want to make Massachusetts the global hub for climate tech. All the innovation that's going to power us away from fossil fuels to our renewables future. Also, this week, my office will be receiving the bids for the largest offshore wind development proposal ever, 3,600 megawatts. We're really excited about that. I'm also excited about the fact that we have now received from the Biden administration tax credits that support all of the industries related to offshore wind. That's super, super important. It's going to be a game changer. I met with Secretary Yellen to advocate for that myself, and that's going to be a big deal to allowing and incenting more offshore wind development. What the caller was asking about is an appointment of somebody who I think is critically important to all this. You see, we're not going to meet our mandates, our goals, unless we find a way to deal with transmission, to bring that wind that's offshore, onshore, to get to homes and to businesses. And that involves a lot of work around transmission lines, the grid, substation. So you got to have, I thought, in order to do that, let's have somebody who's really focused on that, somebody who's really focused on working with utilities, working with communities, working with the workforce too, right, that needs to be trained and on board with getting this work done. Otherwise, we're not going to meet our mandates. So I'm very proud of that appointment and proud of the work that the team is doing around decarbonization in particular, whether it's looking at EVs and what we need to do around charging, whether it's looking at how we're going to build out the infrastructure to be able to deliver the renewables, whether we're talking about solar or wind or hydro. Everything's got to be on the table.
Hannah, do you want me to ask the question for the Maryland?
Hold on for 1 second,
Oh, sorry.
though. What about the Weymouth compressor station?
Oh, as I said, it's under appeal. Remains under appeal. Yeah.
Okay.
Marilyn, who is here, can't come to the mic. She says, how can the ride, meaning the MBTA ride, return to reliable service? She waited 5 hours recently for her pre-scheduled ride. That's Marilyn, who's in the audience.
Hi, Marilyn. Let me follow up with GMA. Okay.
Fair enough. Marilyn, give your contact information. Is it okay to take her contact information?
Oh, of course.
And the governor's office will be in touch. Governor,
But I
can I
just
ask you
want to be clear on one
sorry.
thing, though, because these people are relentless in our phone calls and our text messages. They're very upset, understandably, about the Weymouth compressor station. So I know it's under appeal, as you just said. But is this something that you have an opinion on, or is it something that your new person is going to look into deeply?
That new
Where are you?
person has nothing to do with,
Okay.
with this. As I say, it's under appeal, and I'm going to let the authority there decide the issue and what needs to happen. What I am very much focused on, though, is if we truly want to meet our goals, if we truly, those out there who care about climate, you need to get involved in community. You see some of what's happening right now as we talk about offshore wind coming onshore and communities that don't want to see certain things cited, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get there if something is just on paper as a goal. You have to get there doing the nitty-gritty work. It's also why not only did I put somebody in charge of decarbonization and infrastructure, but I also set up a commission on permitting and regulating. They're going to get me recommendations, I think this month, that's going to speak to what do we actually need to do concretely to speed up the permitting and siting of the infrastructure that I'm talking about that's going to enable us to deliver and distribute renewables.
Governor, before we get back to the calls, last month we talked to you about the Steward healthcare debacle and including some of the things Brian McGrory wrote about with the insane, obscene compensation for the CEO. There was a long story in the Globe that went back and looked at the history of regulation and oversight. And while it did fault some individuals in positions of power, the primary takeaway for me, and I'm wondering if it was for you as governor, was that the appropriate bodies, whether it's the Attorney General, regulatory authorities, don't have the statutory power to do the job that needs to be done with a private equity entity like this. And if you agree with that, this again, I never understand this. If that's true, is the legislature dropping almost everything? And this is what, 200,000 people we're talking about? How many people are in the workforce there? How many?
16,000.
60. I mean, how many patients? 200,000. Isn't it 160 or something?
Yeah, there's a number, and it also speaks to the stability of the healthcare system.
Do you agree
here.
with the Globe's conclusion that there's statutory power lacking? And if you do, is the legislature doing anything about it?
I mean, the legislature just this week held hearings on it, and it's a terrible problem. It's terrible what Steward did. It's terrible what its CEO did, and you've seen just like it reminds me a little bit of what I saw when I went up against the Sacklers in Purdue in terms of the greed and the avarice, and just that's what happened here. To be clear, and we're paying a price for it as a state. I'm very grateful to my Secretary of Health and Human Services, who has been working with providers, working on ensuring the stability of the network. My goal is to protect jobs, to protect patients, to protect the stability of the system. When it comes to legislation, that's something the legislature is having hearings on. We testified yesterday, somebody from our administration about that, and I certainly support any and all efforts to prevent the kind of situation that we are seeing with Steward. It's also the case that Steward, my view was that they were required to produce financial information a long time ago. They refused, and they actually took me to court as Attorney General years ago to try to get an order that they weren't entitled to, weren't required to produce that information. We won, actually, and then they appealed it, so it's on appeal. But yeah, I think that the legislature should be looking at everything here, and anything that we can do to prevent a future scenario or situation like Steward, we should do.
Lou in Norwood, you're on with the governor.
Hi, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
It's a pleasure to be on. I have great admiration for the governor, and I listen to this station and you and Marjorie, Jim, every day.
Very kind,
Thank
Lou.
you.
What's your question for the governor?
Well, it's about her statement about the MCAS, why she said she was against it. She said, and I'm quoting, "I think that assessment is important. We all agree on that. We need to be able to assess how our young people are doing. So I do not support getting rid of MCAS.
Getting rid of
And
MCAS the issue is as a graduation requirement, which is a ballot question.
Correct.
Come this fall. Okay.
Right.
So what do you want to know, Lou?
But the ballot question would not get rid of MCAS.
Correct.
Right.
We'd still be able to assess students.
Right. So what's your question?
So, I was puzzled by what the governor said, and she also said there are about 700 students each year who are unable to pass the MCAS, but it's not just the 700.
Well, Lou, why don't we,
fail
Lou, rather than you characterizing what the governor's position is, why doesn't she explain what it is? And thank you much for your call. Governor?
Yeah, thanks, Lou, for calling. Look, I'm the daughter of educators. You know, my mom was a health teacher and a school nurse. My stepdad was a high school history teacher. By the way, president of his teachers union locally. I've always supported educators and also supported everything that we can do as a state to support our students. Massachusetts, we're home to the first public school in the country, first public library, right? We have education enshrined in our Constitution. This is really important for who we are as a state, and we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to do right by our young people. In terms of MCAS, what I've said is that I think MCAS is important as an assessment tool, and that we have some uniform standard that we want to make sure all of our young people are meeting. If the ballot question goes the other way, we're going to have a situation where it's up to 351 different cities and towns to have that assessment standard. I don't think that makes sense for who we are as a state. When it comes to the graduation requirement, we looked at the numbers, and there are about 700 students a year who are unable to receive a high school diploma because they did not pass MCAS. I want for every single one of those 700 students. And my job and the job that we are trying to do now is look at what do we need to do to make sure those students get their diplomas. That's the work that we need to do. I don't think it makes sense to get rid of this important assessment tool.
You know, one of the things that I don't understand making sense either, in the story the other day, I think it was in the Globe, commenting upon your decision that you will oppose the ballot question, there's a quote from your Secretary of Education saying something like, if this thing were to pass, we have 351 cities and towns, what do we do? And we asked Paul Reville, the former Secretary of Education, he thought his response was the right thing. My attitude is, if there's a chance that come January, it'll be removed as an education requirement, why is your education secretary not preparing for that possibility? It's almost like throwing up his hands saying, well, if it passes, we're really
I don't think it
screwed.
will pass. I don't think it will pass.
Well, what
I
if
think,
it does pass?
No, I mean, look, we are right now focused on what do we need to do right now to support our students and our educators. One example, a few weeks ago, I announced a whole literacy initiative because Massachusetts right now is behind some other states when it comes to teaching kids how to read, right? Too many of our districts are using long debunked curricula when it comes to literacy. And, you know, we need to get back to making sure that every district is using the science of reading, using phonics, teaching what is well-proven methods for our young people to be able to read and to read well. It breaks my heart when I look at literacy levels in some places in the state. And so, you know, that's an example of what my terrific Secretary of Education is doing in terms of new initiatives, new innovations. Let's make sure that our young people are given the very best tools to succeed. Also, as part of that effort, we're putting money into professional development to work directly with educators and teachers on support for what they need to be teaching and delivering the kind of curricula that makes sense.
I want to make just one more quick try.
Hold on. We just stop here for just a second and point out, you may not be aware, Governor Healey, that Jim
okay,
won
let's
a
not
big
do this.
award from the Massachusetts Teachers Association.
She was endorsed by the Mass
Teachers. And I want to point out that the Massachusetts
water.
Teachers Association misrepresented the number of kids who can't graduate because of the MCAS. It is 700, but most of those 700 did not do their schoolwork or show up in school, so it wasn't just the MCAS, it was that. And also that Max Pages, the head of the MTA, initially was not in favor of changing the literacy requirements, which has left 40% of third graders unable to read at levels that
what are you doing, like an editorial or something?
I just want to point this out so the governor knows where you stand on these issues.
If I
on
may,
the wrong side, I would say.
Can I get back? Even if you believe it's not going to pass, I'm going to take one more try at this. If there was a tax cut on the ballot, and you said, I don't think it's going to pass, I'm assuming you'd say to your A&F people, prepare for the worst. This may pass, so we know what to do. If it does, I find it hard to believe, I guess, that your secretary, who I've heard great things about, we haven't had him on yet, and we should, is not preparing for a loss. I mean,
But this is an interesting discussion. Jim, you're asking him to prepare for a loss where he has absolutely no power. So what's the action plan supposed to be when he's got no power?
Preparing
that's why
for what
we need to make sure. No, but that's why we need to make sure that we have some basic standards in place, And also what I've said when it comes to MCAS is we should be willing to look at ourselves and what it is we're measuring. What we measured 15 years ago, 25 years ago may not be what and how we should measure things today. But we need that assessment and we need that commonality. I don't think it makes sense that we have 351 cities and towns with a different way of, and also forcing them to administer some sort of, putting them in a position of having to come up with something. So look, I think bottom line, this is about how do we support our schools, how do we support our young people, right? And how do we support our educators? And
that's right, Jim.
I think we get there. I'm also proud of the fact that we have made historic investments. As governor, I have made, through my team, historic investments, and thank you to the legislature, in education, K-12. We're going to continue to double down on that. As I say, Massachusetts, we are an education state, and we need to make sure we're doing everything we can by our young people.
Rachel and Newton, you literally have 15 seconds for your question, so please make it tight. Go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, Governor. Thank you. I'll make it quick. I'll have to expedite it. The question is, DeSantis plans on bringing more immigrants to Martha's Vineyard, Governor. What are you going to do to cut him off at the path? Don't give him the satisfaction of doing it. So please, I hope you have a plan, and what is it?
Thank you, Rachel.
I think, Rachel, there's a lot of people who want to politicize this. See comments by Governor DeSantis. See comments by candidates running to be governor. And what I've said is I'm not going to play politics here. This is about a need, an imperative for Congress to act. If Republican politicians want to call somebody or call out somebody, call Republicans in Congress and tell them to pass the bipartisan deal that should have been passed that would have resolved this a long time ago, including getting funding to states like Massachusetts are having to bear the cost of this. So I'm focused on getting people housed, getting people working, right? And, continuing to call on Congress to act.
So last week, we only have 30 seconds. Meredith Goldstein from Love Letters was on right before the release of this fabulous podcast with you and your partner, Joanna Lidgate, in which you talked about the importance of music in your life. And we want to know, when you said that your first concert you ever attended was Kool and the Gang, did you do polling and find out you lost support, Governor? That's what
I'm
we
sure
want
I
to know.
lost support. That's what honesty gets you. I didn't think that went through. I was a little kid. I was excited. I went with an older girl and her family to a Boston Common concert.
How was that concert?
Don't remember it.
Okay, fine.
Don't remember.
They're apparently still playing, though.
Okay.
But,
Governor Healey, thank you very much for being with us. Really
Thank you. Good
appreciate
to
it.
see
We're
you,
sorry
Governor.
we did not get to all the texts and the calls. We did the best we could. Governor Healey joins us once a month, and we're very grateful. After his pledge break, the new news media maven and famed local woman Sue O'Connell will join us. We're going to talk with her about the president's many legal troubles, flying the pride flag. A lot of people don't like that, over government installations, and a lot more news. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The GBH Spring Membership Drive ends tomorrow. Please give now to ensure that GBH is here for you each day with the news and information you depend on to keep you informed. Really just takes a couple of minutes at gbhnews.org or call us 888-897-9424. Good afternoon. I'm Mark Cohen, joined in the studio today by Zach Finn.
And the goal right now is to receive 7 contributions in the next few minutes. We need the financial support of everyone who relies on GBH to make this membership drive a success. Please give at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
And we just heard a full hour of Governor Healey along with Jim and Marjorie doing great outreach by the governor to take your questions. It's a great service by GBH to provide the platform for this broadcast, and it's a great public space. If you've ever joined Jim and Marjorie at the Boston Public Library, it's all made possible thanks to listener contributions to fuel this kind of service. That's why we're here asking for your support right now at 888-897-9424, online at gbhnews.org.
Support GBH at $10 a month and receive a 1-year ad-free subscription to the learning language app Babbel. You can study one language, you can study multiple languages. Your subscription subscription provides access to all 14 languages that Babbel offers. Sign up as a sustaining member to GBH at $10 a month and ask for your 12-month subscription to Babbel. You can also give $120 all at once. That deadline is coming up rather quick, 2 o'clock. Not a lot of time here. Online at gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And right now, this hour, we're looking for 5 contributions in the final couple of minutes of the 11 o'clock hour to help us stay on track. This is the next to last day of our spring membership drive, asking you to make a contribution to support the news and information that you trust. We are fueled by listener support. Your support right now, 5 more contributions in the next couple of minutes. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Every contribution makes a difference to GBH and our ability to inform you of what's happening in Boston and across the globe. That's the message today. Participation, giving what you can really does help. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
GBH is commercial-free and listener-supported, and that means we're here because you want us here. This fund drive is an important reminder to do your part and make a contribution to radio that you not only listen to, but radio that you believe in. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Big thank you to Claudia in Weymouth. South Shore in the house says the only news I take as real and important. Have to agree with you there, Claudia. Really appreciate that trust and dedication. Join Claudia right now. Give us that call, 888-897-9424, or go online, gbhnews.org.
Again, this is the next to last day of our spring membership drive. If you haven't made your contribution yet, please take a couple of minutes right now. Show your support for Jim and Marjorie and all of us here at GBH. We count on you to keep us afloat. 888-897-9424, online securely at gbhnews.org.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Shocking and heartbreaking. Maryland Governor Wes Moore's reaction this morning to the collapse of a heavily traveled bridge in Baltimore. This hour, a search operation is ongoing in the water for at least 6 people. Those unaccounted for include members of a construction crew who were repairing potholes when a container ship collided into the Francis Scott Key Bridge early this morning. NPR's Andrew Limbong has the latest.
At the press conference, Governor Wes Moore said that before the ship struck the bridge, crew on the ship had sent out a mayday signal alerting authorities that they'd lost power. This allowed some traffic headed toward the bridge to be stopped.
By being able to stop cars from coming over the bridge, these people are heroes. They saved lives last night.
The search is still ongoing for the missing individuals. The bridge is an important part of the city. It carries over 30,000 vehicles a day, and it stood over the main shipping line in and out of the city. No word yet on when shipping will continue. Andrew Limbong, NPR News, Baltimore.
The Supreme Court has just wrapped up arguments in a case that tests FDA regulations on mifepristone, the pill that is the most widely used method of abortion in the United States. Here's NPR's Nina Totenberg.
At issue are 3 major changes approved in 2016 by the FDA after 15 years of monitoring the drug. First, after approving a different dosing regimen, the agency allowed the drug to be used to end a pregnancy at up to 10 weeks instead of the previous 7. It also cut the number of required in-person doctor visits from 3 to 1. And lastly, the agency allowed the drug to be prescribed and dispensed not just by doctors, but by specially certified midwives and nurse practitioners. 5 years later, at the height of the pandemic, the FDA also allowed abortion pills to be prescribed without in-person medical visits. Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
In the Israel-Hamas war, Gaza authorities say 12 people have drowned trying to retrieve boxes of aid that fell into the sea. The U.S. and its partners have been airdropping food over Gaza to bypass Israel's refusal to allow in more aid trucks. More from NPR's Jana Raff.
Reuters obtained video, it says, show crowds of people running into the sea to retrieve floating cardboard boxes, and then bodies being pulled out onto shore. The United States, along with several other countries, have been airdropping food over Gaza to try to avert what the UN says is imminent famine. Aid by truck, the most efficient way, has dropped sharply due to Israeli restrictions it says are aimed at preventing weapons from entering. Israel has also told the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees it will ban its air deliveries to northern Gaza, after accusing it of being a front for the militant group Hamas. It has yet to publicly disclose the evidence it says it based those charges on.
That's Jana Raff. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. In 2023, white supremacist propaganda incidents here in Massachusetts reached their highest level ever recorded. That's according to a new report released today by the Anti-Defamation League. As GBH's Philip Martin reports, it's the second year in a row of unprecedented levels of hate, much of it by neo-Nazis.
Massachusetts is fifth among a list of 10 states with the highest levels of activity by white supremacists in spreading propaganda and hateful messaging. Most of it is attributed to a handful of groups, including the neo-Nazi Patriot Front and NSC 131. Anti-Semitic and homophobic propaganda was distributed by another group, the Goyim Defense League, in the form of postcards mailed to homes and offices around the country. That includes residents of West Brookfield, who police believe were targeted by the group last summer. The ADL warns that the increased propaganda campaigns allow white supremacists to maximize attention while limiting their risk of arrest and public blowback. Philip Martin, GBH 89.7.
A tentative agreement has been reached between Mass MoCA and union workers at that museum in North Adams. According to museum officials, the union's bargaining unit unanimously endorsed a yes vote Sunday night on the agreement. And the Berkshire Eagle reports that picketing has been put on hold in expectation of a new vote happening today. It could signal the end of months-long back-and-forth bargaining and a strike that began on March 6th. 37 degrees in Brighton. This is GBH News.
NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include PBS with The Cancer Detectives, American Experience with the little-known story of the early war on cancer, premiering tonight at 9, 8 Central on PBS. This is NPR.
7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Ratti, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do now, not only today on Tuesday or Friday, but we are also here on Wednesday, which means we'll be back tomorrow. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now by a local woman, Sue O'Connell, who, by the way, says she was at the Kool and the Gang concert that young Maura Healey went to for her first concert. We'll find if that's true in a minute. She is co-publisher, not Maura Healey, but Sue O'Connell of Bay Windows and the South End News, co-host of NBC 10's Boston's At Issue. Thank you. Every Sunday at 11:30 following Meet the Press. Hello, Sue O'Connell. Were you really at the concert?
I was. Thank you. It was 1986, Concerts on the Common. I was working at KISS 108 at the time. I'm not sure I remember, like Maura Healey doesn't remember the entire concert. But I was, I think, 25, so she was probably about 14, 12, 13, 14. I think we're about 10 years apart.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so
That's
it was
really
fun.
Beautiful thing.
Were you here for Concerts on the Commons in the 80s? It was really, Marjorie, do you remember? Bette Midler played, Whitney Houston played.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and it was just this great, concert in the middle of the city. And Bette Midler, I remember her show, she swore so much, in her Bette Midler fashion, that the really fancy people who lived on the far end of the common complained about the obscenity from Bette Midler. So
Let
it
me
was
just
a problem
say,
for Kevin
and
White.
I assume you'd agree that Bette Midler and Whitney Houston were great, but they're no Cool in the Gang.
They are no Cool in the Gang.
Exactly.
Let me tell you, my first concert was Donna Summer at the Chateau DeVille, in Framingham.
Oh, in Framingham.
One. So
Oh,
that
my
was
God. That must have been great.
77,
Whatever.
78.
Okay, fine. Nice to
Thanks.
see you, Sue O'Connell. Thank you.
Okay, well, had you been here yesterday, Jim and I were rather ebullient in the morning, considering the property that the Attorney General of New York State might seize from the former President Donald Trump, since he was not able to pay his $454 million fine. Then the appeals court in New York lowered the fine to $175 million. I think it's fair to say we were crushed by that decision. But I'm hearing these lawyers, and I'm reading the paper this morning, that a lot of people don't think that's such a big deal, that maybe it was too high, and 175 is fine. The other case, of course, where he didn't do so well is the hush money case involving Stormy Daniels. That trial is going to proceed by April 15th. Apparently his lawyer really annoyed the judge yesterday. So what's your takeaway from these different cases involving the former president?
Yeah, I think the hard part about being emotionally invested in the outcome of a trial is that if the justice system is working correctly, sometimes it does things that you disagree with that it thinks is correct. And obviously Donald Trump, very wealthy, even if he isn't nearly as wealthy as he says he is, he's certainly more wealthy than I am, very powerful, white guy, goes into a court. And I believe, we don't know why they made this change, which of course is a problem with transparency.
No idea.
In our judicial system, sometimes we either say the whole thing is terrible or the whole thing is great. It's sort of, I said yesterday that what Donald Trump has done is given everybody whiplash. Like, you used to not like the FBI, but now you do like the FBI, but now you don't like the FBI. Well, if the FBI is going after Donald Trump, I like it, but if the FBI is investigating Martin Luther King, I don't like it. I don't,
Exactly.
And that's what Donald Trump has done to us. But people I have talked to said, listen, sometimes judges think that rulings, are too high, that this might have been too high, or that if he had to pay it, he would not be able to actually pay it because it would have put him out of business. So sometimes they make, and you know better than I do,
I
Jim,
doubt
because
it.
you actually, so they make an adjustment. It's still a lot of money.
What's your position? What are you saying here?
My position is that, the legal system will break your heart on a regular basis.
Don't get emotionally invested.
No, but can I say something? I think you're missing the boat. I think Jeffrey Toobin missed the boat last night. The issue is not this individual case. Did it make sense that the appellate court, 5 Democratic appointed justices, reduced to 175 and basically eliminate, at least temporarily, all the restrictions on ownership and management, except that overseer federal judge thing. But the issue is it plays into the notion in a serious way that there are 2 systems of justice. Every single case, except this April 15th court date, every damn case, Supreme Court, Georgia, Florida, every case so far has bent over backwards to be kind to defendant Trump. And it sends a message that I think appellate justices should be worried about sending.
Except, oh God, here I am.
Oh,
See,
God,
this is what happens. This is the whiplash of Donald Trump.
We love the FBI, we hate the FBI.
Yet we're not supposed to look at Donald Trump as Donald Trump when he is in the justice system.
They are looking at Donald Trump.
No, they're supposed to look at him as this person who was found guilty for this fraud and not all of the other things that he has done. They're not supposed to look at or been alleged on. They're supposed to look at it individually. And individually, they say in these cases, and listen, I would love it that if everybody who sued somebody had the same amount of money to go into courts together, but that's not how we're set up.
Now, the good news is there will be a trial, arguably in the least important, politically at least important case. But I think the critical issue with that case is we all talk about hush money.
Yeah, it's not about that.
It's not. It's about an attempt to determine the outcome of an election by shutting up somebody who could damage your...
Delayed.
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with it.
When he says,
of course it does.
When
I'm
he
talking about the April 15th case.
April 15th. When he says that it's about election interference... He's telling the truth. He thinks it's because Biden is interfering with this election, which he is not, and the DOJ is not. But allegedly, Michael Cohen and Donald Trump were trying to interfere with the 2016 election.
Exactly.
Because remember, these payments to Stormy Daniels came right after the Access Hollywood tape was released. And it's hard to believe it now, but we actually were, concerned, and the Trump people were concerned that Access Hollywood tape might sink him.
No
problem. And it didn't, and he was worried about this.
Speaking of Donald Trump, it just reminded me, somebody I met this morning. Is your first name Alice? Is it okay if I mention who you are? Alice is sitting in the back of the room, was one of our favorite calls ever. We were talking about a particular doctor, Dr. Harold his first name, Bornstein. He was the self-described hippie doctor, I don't mean that critically, hippie doctor to whom we found out Donald Trump dictated a letter in 2015 in which the doctor said, writing down the words of Donald Trump, if elected, he'll be the healthiest president ever. So we are ridiculing Dr. Bornstein. Then this woman calls who said she was Dr. Bornstein's first ex-wife. Do I have it correct? Am I right? Where'd she go? First ex-wife, is that correct? Is that right? Okay, she's walking on. Boy, now I'm in trouble. In any case, we are honored to have you here. That was one of the highlights. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, she defended Dr. Bornstein and convinced us that he was a very, what are you about to show me a picture, you and him? Walk on over, come on, come on over. This is Alice.
She was the first of many.
Alice
How
is
many
so
ex-wives?
kind. Oh my
Hi,
God.
Alice. Oh, look at.
Oh, this is, you don't have a microphone.
You were his favorite? Or
Look
you
at Dr. Bornstein
Oh,
with the page boy and, what are you saying? I have to repeat.
We love you
all, we're
too.
fairly
Okay,
fond
hold on,
of you.
Jim, hold on,
Can we
Jim.
see this picture? Can you get a close-up of Alice? You look great, by the way. You look great now, but you look really great then. This is Alice with hippie, was he a hippie doctor then or not yet? Not yet. He was a pre-hippie doctor. Dr. Harold, you see him there? There he is. That's a lovely photo. Alice, thanks for coming by. We really appreciate it. Very kind of you. You're a good sport. Let's hear it for Alice. I don't know your last name. I apologize. First ex-wife of Harold Bornstein.
That was not the first ex-wife.
Well, I think there were more than one ex-wife,
You didn't ask a crucial
apparently.
question, Jim.
What?
First of how many?
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed
How
to
many
ask.
people was he married? Three. Thank you, Alice. I appreciate it.
Well, that's
If
not
the second
bad.
ex-wife is listening, if she can possibly call us at 877
Send your photo, too. We'd love to see it.
Can we turn to a serious, well, that's a serious topic.
but
This whole,
never ending.
you know, the gratuitous cruelty of the Republicans in Congress. Explain this pride flag thing that just happened the other day as part of this interim budget deal.
So, across the world, in many government, United States embassies and United States State Department buildings during Pride Month, they would often fly a rainbow flag, a completely innocuous rainbow flag. And when Donald Trump came into office, he said you can't fly the flag anymore, that this is a terrible thing. And his person who was in charge of this, I forget who it was, said
Flags.
No flags. And now the Republicans are, trying to include keeping the ban of LGBTQ rainbow flags on embassies, from keeping the funding going through for Ukraine and Israel and the other funding that's going forward. So what they're saying is it's important that we help our ally Ukraine, it's important that we help our ally Israel with funding, but we're not going to do it if the State Department allows embassies to fly rainbow flags. And this, I understand the horse trading sometimes with bills, but this is just, to your point, Jim, just absolutely cruel, ridiculous, and unnecessary. And the Biden administration, it sort of puts normal, rational people in the position where does the Biden administration and the Democrats say, well, forget it then, because LGBTQ stuff is important to us. The flag is not that big a deal. So let's take it out of the bill so that we can get the funding. Or do they fight it and then absolutely be brought down to the same level that the Republicans are bringing them to? So in the end, it seems that the Democrats and the Biden administration are saying, okay, so it won't fly at the embassy, but it can fly anywhere else on the grounds of the State Department buildings across the world, and we will fight to bring it back, to bring it up the flag.
Could we have to take a break? But before, and you're sticking around, before we do, the Biden administration's response beyond similar things to what you said they defeated close to 50 other efforts in this legislation to do anti-LGBTQ stuff. Is that true?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, at some point you have to just say, we'll try and fix it in the mix later.
Got it. We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
Okay, we'll be right back after a quick pledge break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's time to support Boston Public Radio on GBH. Listener contributions pay for the program and keep it on the air. You don't have to give much to make a difference, but please make a difference by giving now at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
Okay, we are in the fifth day, I think, of our pledge break, and we have these pledge breaks a few times a year because you can turn on GBH Radio and listen to it for free. You can watch our television station for free, and it costs a lot of money to put on this whole production here. A little bit more than 70% of our budget comes from listener support, from people like you. It also comes from grants, but you are the bulk. Your generosity is what really we depend on here. And today, we have a really neat gift to to entice you for $10 a month. This is a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. You know, I remember trying this a few years ago when I was going to, because my kids were overseas, junior year abroad kind of thing. I wanted to go over and have some facility in Italian.
How'd it go?
Really hard. Well, Italian was really hard. French was easier because I learned some of it in school. But the point is, it works. And it's a limited offer just until 2 o'clock today, Jim, which means you're less than 2 hours if you want to spiff yourself up on your foreign language speaking with Babbel. So learn anywhere, anytime. You can do it on your phone, your tablet, wherever. And your progress is synced off devices, so if you start on your computer, you can pick up on your cell phone. If you want to learn a language or many different languages, your subscription provides access to all 14 languages that Babbel offers, which is a lot of languages. Anyway, you get that as a sustaining member to GBH for $10 a month, or you can give $120 all at once. And $10 a month is a lot easier on your wallet. The number is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Did you say it disappears at 2 o'clock?
Yes.
Everybody I've spoken to, I've never done by the way, they pronounce it Babel when
They say it Babel?
No, I'm joking. I was joking.
You're going to be mortified
Italian,
again. So it
whatever.
was Babel.
It was a poor attempt at a joke, obviously.
Oh, very bad.
So I won't say it again. So what is
mean,
my
like
point?
Giggle or babble? Or?
No, I meant like when you're learning
babbling
Italian,
on?
it's Babel. Do you get it now?
No, I don't.
Apparently not. What is my point? My point is today is the second to last day of the pledge drive. So get with it. If you plan to do something, if you plan to make a contribution, out there, if you plan to make a contribution, you all have phones. You go to gbhnews.org, or you excuse yourself and go into the lobby there and call 888-897-9424. Marjorie's so upset about the joke, she just left. In any case, 2 o'clock is the deadline, $10 a month, $120 all at once. This is a really great, whatever Marjorie calls it, enticement. You know what they say on the other pledge drives during the day? They don't say gift or enticement. They say, if you make a contribution of X, we'll thank you. That's better than what we say.
That's right.
We'll thank you with this Babbel or Babel course, ad-free or whatever the hell it is. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, and we're continuing our conversation with local woman Sue O'Connell.
What was the first song at every wedding celebration during the 1980s?
What's the answer?
Celebration by Kool and the Gang.
That's right.
That's right.
That's actually a pretty good song,
There you go.
actually.
Yeah, there you go.
Look at you, looking like a Revere kid. You know what I mean?
So, Sue O'Connell, it's never a good sign when heavily armed federal agents show up outside your house, as they did in Los Angeles, 2 houses of hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. He's got a house in Miami and Los Angeles. Boy, we saw the pictures of them on TV. They're pretty impressive houses. He's done very well. Allegedly, some sex trafficking going on there?
Yeah, there's. We don't know a lot at the moment about what's being reported, but to your point, Marjorie, about his success. It's funny, sometimes I'm surprised that people don't know who he is. He is a major player.
Big deal.
A very big deal in the entertainment world, in the business world, in the fashion world, in the liquor world. He's also been an actor. He's been acclaimed in some roles that he's had on Broadway, no less, not just in movies or television. And he has been accused. Recently, there was a New York law, the law that Jean Carroll used, that was expiring, that allowed people to file sexual abuse claims against people before there was
statute of limitations. It was old, and they waived it up to a certain date.
And Sean Diddy Combs was one of the people who was sued by a performing artist who alleged that very egregious and terrible things that he's accused of having
underage
done
too,
to her.
wasn't
Underage.
she?
And then once that happened, another person sued him, and then another person sued him, and various types of lawsuits, not just that they were the victim of the direct sexual abuse, but they had been required to film sexual abuse, or they had been required to entice other people into sexual activity. And this is one of those situations where there have been rumors about him online for many, many years. Some comics have come out and said very directly that they thought that Diddy was involved in things like this, and they were kind of blackballed out of the industry as well. So,
but he hasn't been. Just to be clear, in fairness to him, while there are civil proceedings, there's no criminal charges.
No criminal charges.
Yet.
And this raid happened, and it was, the helicopter shots of the people grabbing his adult children and holding them. He was not there. There are varying reports about where he is right now. Some people are saying he's left the country. He was in Florida. Again, he's not.
That is leaving the country, being in Florida. Yes, actually. That was redundant.
Then he left from Florida.
Thank you.
That he.
Thank the three of you. We appreciate it.
He's here. So 2 shows every night. So
actually 3 shows. But thank you. Whatever.
So we'll see what happens regarding the criminal charges. But these are very, very serious allegations that they're making around sexual trafficking. So we'll have to see what happens.
You're a good. I am the worst political prognosticator, I admit, in the world. You are actually quite
pretty good at it. Yeah.
Tonight, RFK Jr. is about to announce who his vice presidential running mate will be. He is I believe Marjorie and I are the only 2 people he has not asked to be on the ticket with him so far.
And his sister, Rory Kennedy, was on television last night begging people not to vote
Was
for
she
her
really?
brother.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I mean, they've written letters to newspapers saying that he is not a well man and that sort of thing. And yeah.
Well, he tried Scott Brown. Scott Brown turned him down. We don't know if Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota and a wrestler. We don't know if the nutty quarterback for the Jets, Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
There are a whole bunch of people. What's your prediction?
I don't have a prediction, but the New York Times is predicting that Nicole Shanahan, Shanahan, who's the ex-wife of the Google founder and is a lawyer and investor, may in fact. She did help pay for his Super Bowl ad that he ran that enraged so many members of the Kennedy family and confused everyone else.
Oh, the JFK thing.
The JFK one. And it's expected that because I think it's in Oakland, the announcement, she's going to be the running mate. Part of this,
what's Oakland got to do with it?
Silicon Valley and all that. So part of this is also that he didn't really understand that as an independent candidate, you have to have your vice president named in order to get onto a lot of the state's ballots. So he's kind of playing catch up here that he hadn't had a VP. I don't know if I'm up for covering RFK. I got to tell you, if I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I see his commercials on X, and they say things like, oh my gosh, have you noticed how many more people have chronic illnesses than they did when my Uncle Jack had his Addison's illness? And I'm like, do you realize that more chronic illnesses have been discovered since 1940? It's just the facts that I don't know if I can deal with him and Donald Trump.
2 things. By the way, one, I interviewed him ages ago on television. It may have been at NECN about environmental stuff before he lost his marbles.
And I interviewed him about his book about his cousin. He wrote a book about
Skakel?
Skakel saying that, making the case that Skakel was innocent. And he was a delight.
Yeah.
He wrote a lovely note to me in the book, which I've now hid. The issue. The book.
I mentioned this the other day. I don't know to whom we were speaking about this, but for those who were discounting this, I had forgotten. Oh, it was John King. John King, the night before he was on our show, was looking at Wisconsin, and I think I hope I have the state right, but I'm pretty sure I have the state right. Which in 2016, Donald Trump won, but I think by 10,000 votes. Jamie, can you check this so I'm not providing horrible information? I think he won by 10,000 votes, and what I had forgotten is local woman, really a local woman like you, Jill Stein, got 50,000 votes, almost all of which obviously would have gone to Hillary Clinton, and if I'm right about the state, I may have gotten the state wrong, he would have won. Hillary Clinton would have won. The point being, this in a really close race. This morning, it's a 2-point lead nationally. Admittedly, that's not electoral votes, but popular vote. Trump's up by 2 points. In states that are as close as they were last time, RFK could throw an election, even though no one's quite clear who he helps and who he hurts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the state of the election right now is for Donald Trump to win, all the Republicans have to vote for him. And that doesn't seem to be happening at this moment. For Joe Biden to win, every one of his constituencies, like black women, have to vote for him. He cannot lose any more Latino voters. He has to shore up his young voters have to vote for him. And then when you have RFK, honestly, when I speak to RFK voters and supporters, as many of them are Trump supporters as they are Democrats, I wouldn't say Biden supporters.
Because
but
of the anti-vax stuff?
They all have a very different
Okay.
reason for supporting him, and often it's really just celebrity, I think, when you come to it. I mean, the anti-vax people are the anti-vax people, and I would, they're actually upset with Donald Trump for now taking credit for getting the COVID vaccines through.
Right, he only killed 1 million people.
He only killed 1 million people before he told us to get vaccinated. So it's just, the RFK race is going to be a very complicated one, and seriously, he presents what he calls facts in a way that seem factual, and he really does have some gravitas that
He was a good environmental lawyer.
Yeah, that Trump doesn't have. So I'm just exhausted in advance.
One of the
having to
worst
cover him.
consequences is I'm really having trouble watching the final season of Curb Your Enthusiasm
I know.
for whatever it's.
Well, she hasn't been on that much.
I know, but she has been a huge part of 10 years worth
Listen,
of his wife, Cheryl Hines.
Cheryl Hines, of course, who was RFK's wife and played Larry's wife and now Ted Danson's wife.
That is exactly
Yes.
correct.
I love the Curb Your Enthusiasm.
We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
So, Sue O'Connell, I don't normally think of you in terms of tiny evening bags.
Why not?
But
Why not?
Here, how about this? Here's an example.
Okay, but I see the point of this story. It was actually in the New York Times about women clutching these teeny tiny evening bags that you can't really fit anything
Right.
into. You certainly can't put your phone in there. Maybe you can put some lipstick in there and $20 or maybe a credit card. What are we doing with these teeny tiny bags?
Yeah, it's this fascinating. The whole bag culture to me has always been crazy. I mean, I just want to be able to have my phone, my wallet, my inhaler, and a couple of bucks. That's all I really need to bring with me. But if you go out and you have, I got to really, use my money to buy me a nice bag, not one of those outrageously expensive
Ruby's her
bags.
kid, for
my
those
kid,
who don't know, yeah.
over the holidays, and it's lovely, except I can't fit my inhaler in it, so, I can't really go out because I'll die. But these little tiny bags, mostly because, as the author in the New York Times points out, we don't get to get pockets we don't have inside pockets.
We do not.
If we're wearing evening gowns. So there is this idea that you could just put them in your bosom, right?
Yes.
Just take a little bag and put it in your bosom and keep it there, which of course is where women have been keeping money for, billions
And
and billions
lipstick.
of years, and lipstick.
Yeah.
I don't understand the bag culture at all.
Well, you know what I learned? There's this woman, Anya somebody, who is the queen of the tiny bag. I learned this in the New York Times story.
Times, yep.
Who, in addition to making $1 zillion being behind the tiny bag movement, such as it is, she said that one of her clients used to be Princess Diana, and that Princess Diana had a separate tiny bag made with the letter D on it, which probably is for Diana, to go with every single outfit she had. That's rather expensive at the taxpayers'.
Well, that, and I also
Don't you think?
the whole wealth signaling thing, which drives me absolutely crazy. I continually just, the idea that you would have a bag that is useless for the most part, even just like it's just a regular, expensive $4,000, $5,000 bag, but you can't really use it.
We have to go in a second, but you know what
You
fascinates
see what
me?
Aiden just sent us? This picture of Lizzo with
with
her
a little
iconic tiny bag
tiny
that's like
bag.
the size of
That's
a
right.
matchbook.
But
I'm
the,
sorry.
the bag that always fascinated me was the late Queen Elizabeth's bag. She always had her bag with her, and you think she's got enough servants that she really didn't need to have her bag with her. And what was in that bag?
I know what was in it. A corgi. She has. She always
A teeny
she
tiny
stuffed
corgi.
a little corgi into the bag.
I mean, you did wonder about that. We
Whatever.
never got to the bottom of that.
It was her power that obviously held the entire royal family together for almost 100 years.
I
and
guess.
as soon as she was gone, poof.
Is that true? What you just typed is what Jamie just said. Is she used the bag to signal whatever meeting she was in was over. If she picked up the bag, you
it was
understood.
over.
That's pretty
It's
cool.
like Ruth
actually.
Buzzy. Remember Ruth Buzzy? Ruth Buzzy would just hit you with the bag.
That's right.
From,
So
laughing.
Sue, on this show,
It's the right crowd for a laughing joke.
on this show, you pick up your sandwich. See you
Take my
later,
phone,
Sue.
see you
Thank you
later.
very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Sue O'Connell.
Thank you very much, Sue O'Connell. We've been speaking with our media maven, Sue O'Connell, co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, co-host of NBC 10 Boston at 10 NBC 10 Boston's At Issue, which runs every Sunday morning at 11:30, right after Meet the Press, which was a hotbed of controversy last Sunday with Chuck Todd's announcements about his complaint about Ron McDaniel being hired by NBC. We're going to talk about that with the man himself, I hope, this Thursday. Anyway, up next, Michael Curry discusses the Supreme Court hearing on mifepristone. That is after a quick pledge break. Stay tuned. Boston Public Radio, we're live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
If you listen to Boston Public Radio 3 hours a day, that's 15 hours a week, 60 hours a month, and 720 hours a year. Maybe it's time you pitched in. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
Oh, I forgot. Hi. This is the second to last day. I forgot where I was. I forgot who I was, actually, which is even worse. Having said that, I am Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan, and it is the second to last day of Pledge, Marjorie. That makes her happy. She's eating, so she can't speak at the moment. Here's the deal until 2 o'clock. This is a really good thank you gift, as we learned. If you make a contribution of $10 a month or $120 all at once, it is a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. Marjorie had a brief encounter with it. She said it was quite good. I've spoken to a lot of people who said it's the best language learning thing. It provides access. Oh, listen to this. Your subscription gives you access to all 14 languages that Babbel offers. Did you know that, by the way? All 14 languages. Thank you very much. 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org is how you do this kind of thing. You want to say something?
I do. I want to say the deadline for this Babbel subscription is coming up at 2 o'clock.
Yep.
And I do like to get credit for the contribution. So if you're interested,
selfish.
Your favorite show, and we have the culture show right after us, but if your favorite show remains our show from 11 to 2, this is the time to pony up and get that Babbel subscription for $10 a month. We really, really appreciate everybody that donates to us, and I think this is a particularly good subscription. You know something? I did it because I was going overseas, but even if you're not, isn't it great to be able to speak a few words in a different language? Of course it is. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Joined now by Michael Curry. Michael, of course, is the president and CEO of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers, also a member of the National NAACP Board of Directors, where he chairs the board's Advocacy and Policy Committee. Hello there, Michael Curry. Nice to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
Michael.
Good to be back with you.
So we're going to start with your healthcare hat. And, of course, the Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments today about whether mifepristone should be restricted. And I'm going to play a little bit of sound. First, it's the lawyer who's arguing for the anti-abortion group. That would be Erin Hawley, who's actually married to Josh
Hawley, Senator Hawley's
wife. Probably
wife?
most famous for giving the big salute to all the protesters on January 6th and then scurrying down the hall.
Exactly.
He was so scared.
We're so scared of the protesters a little bit later. But in any case, here she is, and we're going to follow with some sound from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Here's Erin Hawley explaining the emotional injuries, of all things, claimed by pro-life doctors seeking to restrict access to mifepristone.
As the FDA acknowledges, many women do go to the emergency room. And if we just think about what that might look like, take Dr. Francis. She's on the labor and delivery floor supervising.
I'm sorry, I don't want to hypothesize. Tell me in her declaration where she talks about not being able to object or pose a conscientious objection.
She talks about, Your Honor, being
can you point me to any place in the declarations where a declarant states that they attempted to object but were unable to?
No, Your Honor.
Boy, Ketanji Brown Jackson did a hell of a job there.
That was a different clip than I called for, but
sorry.
That was obviously Ketanji Brown Jackson and not Clarence Thomas. I didn't understand what Erin Hawley was talking about, but in any case, this is a big deal in the healthcare. There's no abortions done in healthcare at public health centers. You have to go to a clinic.
Yeah,
right?
we don't do.
But still, this is a big deal for Massachusetts, even though we have stockpiled mifepristone here. If the Supreme Court puts all these restrictions on it.
Yeah, again, you've heard me say this before, that this is chess, not checkers. And the time that Donald Trump was president, he put some key positions on the Supreme Court that will now make decisions that will impact a woman's right to choose. We know that in the wake of the Dobbs decision, and now there will be other decisions taking up issues like this medicated-assisted abortion, mifepristone, and it's a political move. It is not really a case that should be before the court, as it was the FDA approved, and now they're challenging the FDA's decision in approving this drug. This is unprecedented, and quite frankly, there's a slippery slope. We now know that the majority of abortions in this country are medication-assisted abortions, and that's the trend that was going in that direction even before the Dobbs decision, and now it's hastened the pace of that, and they want to curb the access to abortions.
63, am I right, 63% now?
63%.
Which is really huge. You know, Governor Healey, we asked her the same question, and she said, you know, we're going to do everything we can to protect people. But I want to be clear, when you mentioned the stockpiling, Marjorie, as we said to the governor, there are 15,000 doses.
Right.
It's not a hell of a lot of doses. When that runs out, it runs out. And to be clear here, despite how good our laws are, my understanding, I want to confirm with you, and the governor said the same, confirmed the same thing, that a bad decision from the Supreme Court on mifepristone would apply even to Massachusetts. So there's no escaping.
Absolutely. This is, again, an attempt to curb abortion access across the country, not just in certain states. So it has implications for all of us. And quite frankly, what we're seeing now is that if you're a woman in a southern state that has curbed abortion access, both in person, this is now going to force you to jump through hurdles to get medication-assisted abortions. That means a certain number of visits with your provider. That means that these are going to create hurdles. And then people won't be able to travel to other states in the same ways they do now to get access to that care.
You know, Mike, I'm sorry, go ahead, Marjorie.
One last thing I wanted to mention about this, and this, I'm reading a story in the Washington Post that talks about that if the anti-abortion forces win with mifepristone at the Supreme Court, that abortion rights advocates say they'll continue to send the second medication, the misoprostol, I think that is how you pronounce it, only protocol. And it's effective, but it causes much more cramping and much more bleeding and much more pain. Yep. And that's kind of written off like, hey, you know, no big deal. Just have more cramping and more bleeding and more pain. And it's just so insulting, I think, to women alone in their homes that are supposed to go through this without the two drugs.
What I think is clear on many members of Congress, and I think is clear with some of the members of the Supreme Court, is they don't care about that. Yeah. So while you and I and Jim may care about that, I think that this is a political move, a tactical move to eliminate abortions in this country, no matter what the circumstances, and this is constantly creeping into the Supreme Court to make that decision.
Yeah, we're talking to Michael Curry. Can we leave healthcare behind just for a second, even though it's what you do by day? Philip Martin did another frightening but wonderfully important report. He reported on the ADL talking about white supremacist incidents, and Massachusetts ranks number 5 in the country. I think we discussed this with you maybe a year ago when we also ranked in the top 5 or 10. Whenever I read that, I guess I'm sort of incredulous. And is the reason because we attempt to do more to protect the rights of people in our state that the neo-Nazis and others target us, or is there something else going on that propels us into the top 10% of white supremacist behavior?
Well, the timing of this, I just had an opportunity to be on a panel a week and a half ago with the ADL talking about this exact topic. And one of the things that we discussed on that panel is the fact that Massachusetts is really trying to address these extremist groups. And they have a home in the South. They have a home in many of those southern red states. But they want to crack the code on inclusion, diversity, justice, equity in Massachusetts. So one is people come here to rabble-rouse and to espouse this extremist views. But I want to remind people in Massachusetts, they live here too. Right? We tend to think it's somewhere else, but the reality is people harbor racial animus and hatred here in Massachusetts, all across the Commonwealth. And I've said this before, they were unbridled, unmasked, unleashed in 2016, and they're now openly sharing their extremist views, and it's a concern, and we should all be vigilant and paying attention.
Are you surprised, though, that we're, I hate to use the term highly ranked, but that the percentage of incidents, we're in the top 5 states?
Well, I think, again, because of our policies here, this is the place you come to really push extremist views because you'll get national attention. I think they come here for the media, and they more often than not achieve that goal. I was down just a half a mile from here when the hate groups came and marched on downtown in the Commons. I decided to come down and be the anti-protest to them, and it got pretty violent and intense. And it was a reminder that I felt like I was back in the 1950s and 60s marching through Selma. And I remembered what I'd read about, but I had to see it up close. That is where we are in this country right now.
You know, speaking of, just as a related thing, before we take a break, you mentioned anti-DEI stuff, anti-racial tolerance. There's a really interesting, I'm not even sure how I feel about it, story in Forbes about a guy writes that some of the best people to be standing up to the anti-DEI efforts that are not only infecting corporate America, but colleges across the country, are the highest profile people at those universities. They're star black athletes. And they talk about, for example, at the University of Florida, which is wiping out all DEI stuff for obvious reasons because of the boss there, Ron DeSantis and others, that he's urging they're young men and women for the most part, kids in some cases, to be leaders on this. Is that a fair and appropriate, call?
It is a call that should be made, right? It's people to use their power, their privilege, their access to force institutions to do the right thing. And University of Missouri, just about a decade ago, the athletes did that.
Yeah.
And it led to some removals of leadership in University of Missouri around not responding to hate incidents or discrimination incidents on campus. But it's a lot to ask of a student, right? Because I come from a housing project, right? If I had a chance to play in an NCAA tournament or NCAA, and I know that my family is relying on me to be successful, to go to the NBA, to then walk away from a tournament or from a school is a lot to ask when my family's riding on my opportunity. However, I'm reminded of the movie The Help, and one of the lines we often quote from that movie is, "Courage will not skip this generation." And when you really want to do right in justice, when you really want to do what James Reeb did when he left Boston, the white Unitarian Universalist minister, and went to Selma to answer Dr. King's call, he was murdered, or Sherna Goodman and Cheney, or the many others, then you are risking your life, you're risking your job to make a difference. And I hope this generation embraces what so many have done before them. And maybe for some of those athletes, it is walking off the court and refusing to play.
You know what was really nice, though, and I admit he's sacrificing a lot less than one of these kids. Was it Emmitt Smith who was quoted in this piece?
Yes.
Who is a Hall of Fame running back in the pros, Hall of Fame, or whatever it's called in college, from the University of Florida, tweeting or Instagramming how disgusted he was with his alma mater. And well, again, he's not going to lose what a young kid would lose, but he doesn't have to do what he did. And I thought that was a wonderful inspiration for those young men and women to show the courage.
Absolutely.
That it was.
But when you look at these numbers, I mean, okay, they're getting rid of this DEI stuff. You look at Florida. 79% of the women's basketball team, 74% of the football team, 69% of the basketball team are black kids.
Yep.
So we're going to get rid of DEI, but we don't want to lose any games here. And we got these great black athletes. I mean, it's just so hypocritical.
And another data point, because you talked about the majority of those teams are made up of black athletes, but not the majority of the students.
Right. Exactly.
That the percentage can be somewhere around 2.5% or so.
21.5% of the 18-14-year-olds in the state are black kids, but they make up just 5% of the undergraduate body.
So we're not letting them in.
Right.
They're not matriculating, but we're letting them in for college scholarships for basketball. We're using them to make money for the college. Some of them don't even graduate because they don't have the infrastructure supports to get them through. And then we're capitalizing on their talent, but not supporting DEI broadly within those schools. That's a problem.
This time of year, I'm embarrassed I didn't think of this till just now. One of the great things that was ever done in the Globe on this subject, I don't even know if we knew you then, Dirk Jackson, who was then at the Boston Globe, during March Madness, would do the brackets of the 64 teams, I think only men's in those days he would do, and he would do the graduation rates, not the typical standings, but graduation rates of these kids, overwhelmingly kids of color at these schools that made it into the final rounds, making exactly the point that the two of you are making, is how they're used by these universities at the same time that they're not educating them and they're undercutting their ability to be treated fairly.
And there's something you don't know that I probably never mentioned when I'm here. When I graduated college, I went back and started doing this training across the country for black students on proudly white campuses for that exact reason.
Really?
That all students go through challenges, right? The freshman blues, the sophomore whatever, the junior whatever. Like those are the things of being isolated, being away from family. But what's different is black students are also dealing with racial isolation. They're dealing with microaggressions. I had a teacher say to me my first month in school when I was in Minnesota, leaving Roxbury, said, "Oh yeah, I want to go to each of the students on your backgrounds. I'm going to come to you, Michael Curry, because I want to talk about gangs and violence."
Oh, jeez.
No exaggeration. I want to talk about gangs and violence in this class. I think it was a sociology class or something. So imagine you're trying to fit in. You're one of two black students in a class, and all of a sudden he calls me out to speak to gangs and violence as if I'm an authority on that because I'm black. So understand that black students on predominantly white campuses deal with this all the time, and yet we wonder why they fail out, why they don't succeed, or why they don't finish. So we need to address those issues.
I just want to say one thing about that listing as one of the few Catholics still standing.
Yeah.
A lot of the Catholic schools, like Georgetown, got these kids through. So if the colleges have made more of an effort, it doesn't, because these kids were unable to learn or didn't have time. If they made the effort, the college, to make sure
Great
these
African-American coach at Georgetown, John Thompson,
That's
who
right.
actually valued the minds of his students.
Anyway, I just want to make that point. We're talking to Michael Curry. We're going to talk to him, keep talking to him. He's from the NAACP and knows everything about health in Massachusetts. We're going to be right back after a quick break, listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
Live, local, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Jim Braude, Marjorie Egan, Boston Public Radio. It's here on GBH Radio because of your support. Now's your chance to keep the conversation going. Give online at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
Okay, we have a lot of commenters, people that called up and donated already. Paul from Brighton says, fact-based local reporting, vitally important to functional democracy. Quality programming at GBH is great. Love Edgar B. Hoover III's Curiosity Desk. He's on the Culture Show, which is right after us at 2, and discussions with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. We have Anonymous in Melrose said, I've been listening to NPR for years, but until last year never donated. One of my best friends was a contributor for years and died last year. I've decided to honor him and do the right thing. I'm a contributor since last year. And then William from Ipswich, getting fact-based news is so important. Also, Boston Public Radio with Jim and Margie. People say nice things about us in these comments usually, or they make fun of us, one or the other. But those were all nice comments, and we very much appreciate those people. Jeffrey from Leominster, Lena from Brookline, Alexa from Boston, and the other people that took the time to donate. We are supported by listeners like you. Most of our money comes from the generosity of listeners like you. So we really appreciate you taking the time to donate. If you want to join that group, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
I'm going to just read one or two. Michelle Marblehead, I'm a work-from-homer, and Marjorie and Jim are the best co-workers. That's pretty great. Again, only one day to go in this pledge drive, so if you're contemplating giving, we hope you do it today. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org for $10 a month. You get that fabulous year-long subscription to the wonderful language learning app Babbel, and if you plan on doing it, please do it now. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. One of the great things you do, Michael, is you were kind enough to give us a little tutorial every couple of visits on Black history, and I'm told you were going to do exactly that for the final few minutes today.
Yes, I'd love to. I want to define something. So I'm going to call this segment the gaslighting of Black America, but the gaslighting of America. But I want to define what gaslighting is. According to Merriam-Webster, gaslighting is the psychological manipulation of a person, usually over an extended period of time, that causes the victim to question the validity of their own thoughts, perception of reality, or memories, and typically leads to confusion, loss of confidence, and self-esteem. So I want to tell you about the gaslighting of America. In June 2020, at least 208 schools in 18 states were named for men with ties to the Confederacy. Since June 29th of that year, 6 of the Confederate-named schools had changed their names. Now remember, this was a backlash after George Floyd, as people start questioning the statues and the memorials. But I want you to know that I mentioned it before. As I was watching an NBA game the other night, when the African-American player made a shot, they go, oh, and he went to the Robert E. Lee High School. So I want you to think about that for a minute, that the Daughters of the Confederacy, late 1800s, after the Civil War was lost in 1865, went on a campaign from the late 1800s to the mid-1950s, and it usually correlated with advancements in racial justice, to then popularize the Confederacy, retell the story of the South as if they were the heroes. Now, that's the gaslighting of America, that so many of our military bases, our schools across this country have been named after Confederate soldiers who, by all understanding, fought to defend slavery. And yet, Black students in many of those communities are going to schools right now, in schools named after men who sought to keep them as slaves. Now, I want to make sure people are grounded in the fact that slavery was about rape, about abuse, about owning other human beings, about forced labor. And yet, we seem to have this inability to go back and say, wait a minute, we need to detach ourselves from that history and those untruths. And now let's rename these schools and let's rename these bases and let's be honest about what the Confederacy was. We have not done that as America.
You know, speaking of Daughters of the Confederacy, correct me if I'm wrong, we just talked a few minutes ago, it's not just over there that horrible things are happening, it's right here. Wasn't it on George's Island during Governor Baker's administration? There was some sort of tribute brought there by the Daughters of the Confederacy that I'm quite convinced, correct me if I'm wrong, that Governor Baker had removed.
Yes.
2017 or something like that, right here in Massachusetts,
Absolutely.
right out in the Bay. Yeah.
I want to read what their intention was, the Daughters of the Confederacy, and this is a quote. Tell the glorious fight against the greatest odds of a nation that a nation ever faced, that their hallowed memory shall never die. And their primary activity was to support the construction of Confederate memorials. So this happened all across the country. 55 schools were named after Confederate Robert E. Lee, and more than a dozen each honor General Stonewall Jackson and Sidney Lanier, a poet and private of the Confederate Army. And last but not least, countless other schools bear the names of individuals with racist histories, including 22 that are named after politicians who signed the Southern Manifesto opposing school integration after the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education decision. We have some reconciliation to do as a country about what we think history is and what history actually was. To me, that's gaslighting, because it makes an African American like me to say, wait a minute, we're celebrating Confederate soldiers. You go into many southern states, and when you walk into state facilities, you will see Confederate flags and you will see monuments to these men. That's disturbing as an American, and we've not dealt with that.
So you mentioned the NBA player that went to Robert E. Lee High School. What do you think when you're 15 years old and you're a black kid that does to you?
Well, one is, that's why the governor of Florida doesn't want to teach history, right? Is that the way to keep people sort of docile about this stuff is to not tell them the truth. That's why, and you've heard me say before, if I can ask you to name 5 slave heroes and sheroes from 1619 to 1865 and you can't name them, you got a crappy history education. Because that means from 1619, almost 250 years, no black man or woman fought to free themselves. They're not sheroes and heroes. They've not given me liberty or give me death. So I challenge the fact, you're an African-American 15-year-old. One is you're probably conflicted because you have to go to school. Chances are if you make noise about that, you'll be suspended, expelled, you'll be disruptive. And that's a lot to ask of our children, to be disruptive about the injustices even in the name of their school.
You know what else would surprise me too? You mentioned that in 2020, June 2020, 208 schools, 18 states named for men with ties to Confederacy. But after all the reassessment and the supposedly looking within ourselves after the George Floyd murder, only 6 have changed their names.
So
That's
more
not
have changed
very
since
many.
that data point, but most of them in the South are staying the same. And some states are actually changing laws. I think it's Alabama has changed the law that you can't change the name of the school unless you go through the legislature first. Because of course, you can have a school that decides to change it, but if your legislature is still majority tied to the Confederacy or the false history of the Confederacy, then they can overrule a decision around changing that name. I think Alabama is an example of that. So we have this, I want to end with a Carter G. Woodson quote on this, founder of Negro History Week or Black History Month, because I want everyone to remember what he said. He said, history is not the mere gathering of facts, because we like to gather facts. The object of historical study is to arrive at a reasonable interpretation of the facts. We've not done that.
So before you go, I've got some very good news for you. I'm going to ask you to guess what book Marjorie and I just purchased and are starting to read.
You bought it first.
What book did we just purchase and are starting to read?
The Color of Law?
Color of Law.
Yes.
Right.
A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America.
And I was looking at it last night, and just the pictures were so upsetting. It's
Richard Rothstein.
tough.
Once we get through it the next few weeks, we're going to talk to you about it. Michael Curry, it's great to see you as always. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We've been talking to Michael Curry, President and CEO of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers and board member of the National NAACP. I also want to mention the Philip Martin story Jim referenced on white supremacy in Massachusetts. You can find it at the WGBH news website. Coming up, can congestion pricing ever work in Boston? And what about this horrible bridge tragedy in Baltimore? We're going to discuss that and more with the director of MIT Sensible City Lab, Carlo Ratti. He's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The GBH Spring Membership Drive is ending tomorrow. Your contribution now is essential to keep Jim and Marjorie, Boston Public Radio, and all the programs you value on the air and available to all. If you can give, please do so by giving online at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424. A good afternoon to you. I'm Mark Owen, joined in the studio by Zach Finn.
And right now we're looking to receive 15 contributions in the next few minutes to keep on track during this hour. Please sign up as a sustaining member or make a one-time gift. The money you give now will help fund the news in the months ahead. gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
What makes public radio so special? Well, it's radio worth remembering. It's radio that matters to you after it's been broadcast. You meet people who inspire you, and you're introduced to ideas that help you grow in your thinking. You also make public radio special. It's your contribution that fuels our journalism and our programming. Please take a moment. Give right now at 888-897-9424. Online, gbhnews.org.
Support GBH at $10 a month and receive a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. You study at your own pace, learn anytime, anywhere on your desktop, smartphone. You can do the tablet. Your progress synced across all devices. You can pick up right where you left off. Sign up as a sustaining member to GBH at $10 a month and ask for your 12-month subscription to Babbel. You can also give $120 all at once. Again, that deadline is coming up fast here at 2 o'clock. Really running out of time. Online at gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
All right, we have some momentum. Just 11 contributions left to go this hour. 11 contributions in the next couple of minutes. Help us stay on track. This is the next to last day of our spring membership drive. Every hour so important to help us stay financially in good shape to continue bringing you Jim and Marjorie and all the news and information you depend on here on GBH. Again, 11 contributions to go. Just a couple of minutes left to get there. Please make that call right now at 888-897-9424 or look for the donate button when you find us at gbhnews.org.
Please become a new sustaining member to GBH right now. It really doesn't take much to make a difference. Where else can you invest $5 per month and get hours and hours of valuable information, interesting discussion, and intelligent entertainment? The answer is nowhere. It's just $5 a month for all of your listening. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Once again, tomorrow is the last day of our membership drive. Our thanks to everyone who has already given. If you have yet to support GBH, you're running out of time. Please make it known that Jim and Marjorie and all of us here at GBH are important to you by giving right now. You can go online, gbhnews.org, or call us 888-897-9424.
The monthly sustaining membership is the preferred way to support GBH. It's quick and easy to set up. You just pick an amount for a recurring charge from your bank account or your credit card. Many folks start out by giving $10 per month, so please take those few minutes right now and sign up. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Don't forget, we have our great thank you gift, $10 a month on our Sustainer plan. You'll get a 1-year ad-free subscription to Babbel, the online learning app. You got 14 languages to choose from. Pick any one or any number of them. Learn at your own pace. Take it with you on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop. Bite-sized lessons make it easy to learn, and you'll be speaking like a native in no time at all. $10 a month or a one-time gift of $120. This goes away at 2 o'clock, so your time's starting to run out. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
And we are all the way down to 7 contributions to go. We got just a couple of minutes here. Your gift is going to help pay for the news that you trust and help make this membership drive a huge success, but you got to act now. 888-897-9424 or go online, gbhnews.org.
Want to send some thanks out to folks joining us today. Richard in Arlington, one of our newest members to the GBH family. Thank you so much, Richard, for making that leap and becoming a listener contributor. Also, Aaron in Attleboro, another new member, loves Jim and Marjorie, makes my day so much better. Thank you so much, Aaron. William in Ipswich says getting fact-based news is so important. Also, Boston Public Radio with Jim and Marjorie, always informative and entertaining. Please do what William, Aaron, and Richard have all done. Show your support right now. Give what your budget allows. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Support GBH at $10 a month and receive a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. You can study one language. You can study multiple languages. Your subscription provides access to all 14 languages that Babbel has to offer. But hey, you got to act soon here. Give us a call right now, 888-897-9424. Go online, gbhnews.org.
listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. As we hope you know by now, we're also at the library on Wednesdays. So we'll be here today, Wednesday, and Friday. Hope you'll join us. In February, a Globe opinion piece commended New York City for its new congestion pricing program. It went on to say that Boston, which has the fourth worst traffic on the planet, could create an even better plan to control traffic with the right political and policy actions. We're joined now by the guy who wrote it, Carlo Ratti. He's a professor and director of the Sensible City Lab at MIT. He's a founding partner of the International Design Office, Carlo Ratti Associates. Carlo, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. So before we get to congestion pricing, we obviously have had a tragedy here in Baltimore with this cargo ship bringing down a bridge there. And I want to play a little sound from President Biden addressing the recovery efforts after the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. Here's Biden.
It's going to take some time. The people of Baltimore can count on us, though, to stick with them at every step of the way until the port is reopened and the bridge is rebuilt. You know, we're not leaving until this job gets done. Not leaving until then. So I just want to say God bless everybody everyone harmed this morning and their families, and may God bless the first responders, many of whom risked their lives.
So we know now that the cargo ship lost power. It's on a May Day. That workers tried to get traffic off the bridge, but obviously not all the traffic got off the bridge. Is there any bigger implication of this story, Carlo, that we should be knowing about?
Well, look, I was reading the news as you are, so I'm following what is happening. It's clearly a tragedy. I also was reading about the fact that it looks like this was difficult to avoid in this case because of the ship losing power. If you look at the future, something that can help in similar cases, there is more and more autonomy, intelligence brought to ships. You can think the same way as we got self-driving cars on our roads. There's more and more research about self-driving ships. You can probably think about dual engines that can help in such conditions. So probably, if you look in the future, probably new technologies could help a little bit. But when I'm reading about what happened today and this tragedy, there's probably very little could have been done with the hardware that we have today.
We're talking to Carlo Ratti. So, Carlo, you wrote this piece about congestion pricing. We should give you a little background. We probably discussed congestion pricing with Governor Baker when he was governor, 20 times through the years that he was with us. He was not a supporter. He thought it was particularly going to accrue to the detriment of working class people who couldn't avoid coming to a city with their cars in the middle of the day. Explain to us, for starters, what congestion pricing is so we're all on a level playing field.
Sure. Well, congestion pricing, and it's coming to the United States, in New York, in Manhattan now. Congestion pricing means that you're basically going to charge based on congestion. The first city to deploy it in its present form was Singapore. Singapore is experimenting with this for a few decades now. In the early 2000s, also with electronic congestion pricing. You can do it in a way that can actually incentivize some people, some communities versus other communities. The key point is that if we are too many and we want to use the road, then there has to be a way in order to spread that over time, and congestion charging is one way to do it.
I think New York's vote, the final vote is tomorrow, I think. Am I right about that? I think you're right, yeah. I think it's tomorrow. But there are a number of cities, as you mentioned. I remember, just hearkening back to Governor Baker, he told us, I believe on the air, that the London experiment was not a success because they hadn't decreased traffic. And the next day, the something of London responded and said he was misrepresenting the facts, that in fact traffic had been reduced in downtown areas by 30%. Is the story of those international cities which have adopted congestion pricing a successful story?
Look, many of them are a successful story. And also London, by many metrics, is a successful story. I think, however, here, Boston has an interesting opportunity. How so? And the opportunity is also to look at something that goes beyond what London did now a few decades ago, what Singapore has been doing. If you do congestion pricing in a way which is much more sensitive to the local conditions, and if you do it in a way, let me say this with an analogy. So somehow, usually when you got a big traffic jam, it's not because you lack capacity. It's because you got everybody at the same time. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's not really about charging people to use the road. It's simply incentivizing, using it a bit earlier or a bit later. So if you do that, you're basically flattening the curve, and you can, without any additional cost, you can actually have a better mobility for everybody. So what I want to say is today's technologies, unlike the one that London put in place quite a few years ago, today can allow you to be much more sensitive to the local condition. Again, Singapore is leading the way in this, and it doesn't mean you need to actually increase the cost of moving. You can just put incentives in order to reshuffle so that people use the road when it's free.
Well, Carlo, you wrote a great piece for the Globe about what could happen in Boston. Easy Pass style fobs, smartphone apps, giving some of the tax money back to the low and middle class people who might be affected because they have jobs that cause them to have to drive into the city about congesting during the congested hours. So tell us, elaborate on those ideas. What'd you say?
Yeah, no, there's exactly, in a certain sense, if you look at the old road pricing schemes, they were about, you enter, like in London, you enter in the central zone and you pay a fee, you pay money. And those are usually designed in a way to reduce the total vehicular traffic. But sometimes, and we learned this over the past few years, especially COVID has made our lives much more flexible. We can take a call from home and then go to the office a bit later and so on. Sometimes what you need in a city, the key thing is actually to spread demand and spread the use of the road over time. And again, this becomes possible when you use the type of things, when you use apps, when you use real-time information, and so on. You can think about next generation congestion pricing that is really mostly to make sure we use the infrastructure in a better way.
It seems to me that not only do you need the buy-in of government, and even Mayor Wu, who is as concerned about traffic and the environment as virtually any mayor in America, has some, I want to word this carefully, she has some details she feels need to be ironed out. But you also need the cooperation of the private sector, I would assume, Carlo, so that there's some flex time or something that ensures that a lower middle income worker who has to get to work, thinks the T is totally undependable, which it often is, has to drive to get there. If they have to go during the key hours, they're going to be out a lot of money. So you need private sector buy-in, don't you?
Yeah, you need it. But as we were saying, you can really, it's a matter of incentives. You can also be, overall, all of this could be neutral. You're not going to ask people to pay more to enter the city, but it's a matter of incentives, and you can actually incentivize some communities. Or, certainly you can use, you can use this in a way to incentivize some of the people you were mentioning before. And so, certainly they're the ones you want in order to buy in.
But how would it work? How would the Easy Pass style fobs or the smartphone app work? How would that, if you had one, what would that mean?
Yeah, Singapore is the city that's experimenting most with this. Singapore has a different transponder, but similar to the Easy Pass. But basically the difference is that in the, as I said, in the old traditional road pricing schemes, you just have a boundary. And when you cross the boundary, you need to pay some money to get into the city.
Right.
That's how it works with London, the system you were mentioning before in London. While if you go to something which is based on app, then what you can do is, first of all, is based on where somebody's coming from. You can actually incentivize, allow people who need to go to the city from outside, from the suburbs. They could be, they could have they could even be incentivized to use the infrastructure. Other people could actually be asked in order to change over time, so they have an incentive in order to take it when it's less congested. That's what happens in Singapore. In Singapore, you got prices go up, but it can become also negative. There can be a credit you get if you use the infrastructure when nobody is there.
And so you get like a bill, like you do on the Mass Pike, that would come every month, and for however often you use the Mass Pike kind of deal.
You could do it. Imagine that's through your app. But what I'm saying is that's what will happen in New York. But I think it doesn't need to be a bill, again, because you can have plus and minuses, more like an incentive to use it when it's less congested.
My understanding, Carlo Ratti, is that in New York City, correct me if I'm wrong, that they're expecting to raise $1 billion and that all of the money is earmarked for transportation-related improvements. You, I believe, in your piece in the Globe said the same thing. One of the incentives for people and their governments to buy in is to make a commitment that all the money that's raised goes back into the transportation system. I'm right about that, correct?
Yes, this is correct in New York. But again, that's part of the discussion. What I want to say is that the new type can allow you to basically to be neutral, so you're not going to get any additional money from the system. You're just putting incentives to use better infrastructure, or you can actually decide, like New York, that then there's money that's going to be collected, and that could go into, for instance, in Boston, into improving the team.
You know, one of the things I'm amazed about, by the way, Governor Baker, I don't mean to be bad-mouth him behind his back, because we said this to his face, too. He not only was against congestion pricing, he was even against a pilot. And it seems to me when you have some of the worst traffic in the world, you'd be there. I don't know if you know Barry Bluestone, Carlo, but we had him on a couple of years ago. He was from the Dukakis Center. And Barry said to us that if the same progression of traffic density continues, that by, I forget what year, 2030, Marjorie, or something?
Yes.
He said the speed on 93 North will be 0 miles an hour, meaning total and complete gridlock. Why has there been, I mean, New York's the first city in the United States, I believe, that has embraced this. Why has there been such resistance to doing something to attempt to deal with this traffic nightmare across the country?
Well, but I think you're right. You know, with urban innovation, you always want to start, do an experiment. In New York might not be perfect, but I think I agree with you. I think Boston should test it. And I think we've seen cities testing it on a small scale, and then you're expanding it, changing it. Somehow the technology is there. Boston is one of the leaders globally in mobility technology, in real-time technology, and so on. So I think the best thing would be to really use the city as a living lab.
We're talking with Carlo Ratti. He directs the Sensible City Lab at MIT, founding partner of the International Design Office, Carlo Ratti Associates. So tell us about this 15-minute city thing.
Yeah, well, the 15-minute city, to be honest, is an old concept. You know, we have neighborhoods in our cities, and we've always had neighborhoods in North American, European cities all over the world. However, a couple of years ago, planners started getting excited about starting from the neighborhood and pushing the boundaries a bit more in order to make it even more walkable. The idea of the 15-minute city definition is that you live in a neighborhood where most of the things you need in your everyday life, they should be within 15-minute walk or bike ride from home. So that's the definition. And actually, that started being discussed a lot also initially in France. Carlos Moreno, a professor at Sorbonne, is the person who conceptualized it a few years ago. The mayor of Paris brought it to the global stage. She was the chair of C40, the Global Association of Cities. Boston is part of them. And so it became a very discussed topic, both in city, in urban circles, also in academia. Again, the idea is a very interesting idea. It's about study from neighborhoods. We've always had neighborhoods, but as we show in a paper that just came out together with Ed Glazer from Harvard, you shouldn't push it too far. And actually, to push the 15-minute city concept too far, you risk increasing segregation in the city, because then people will only stay within the neighborhood. And we need to realize, a city becomes a city beyond the 15 minutes. That when we meet each other, when we go to beautiful concerts together, and that cannot be cloned in every neighborhood.
Can we return for the final minute or two to this congestion pricing thing? Because I'm a huge fan. I don't know if you're dealing on the political side at all. We mentioned the resistance, opposition from Governor Baker. Everything we've heard, we didn't ask her today, we should have. But the last thing I read from Governor Healey, she is open to this. Mayor Wu is open to it, subject to getting answers to some, I guess, as I say, detailed questions. Does anybody who's advancing this concept believe that the snail-like legislative bodies in this state are ready to make this leap? Is it just an academic discussion, literally and figuratively right now?
Well, it seems to me now that New York is going to be a big example for many cities. Many cities are looking at New York and seeing how this is going to work out. I think if in New York will happen what you mentioned before, like in London. People are overall quite happy. They are actually expanding congestion charging in London. This is happening in many cities globally. So if the New York experiment is going to be successful, I'm pretty confident that many cities across the United States will try to implement similar policies. and Boston as well. Now, what I think Boston should do is actually look at how to leapfrog New York and actually look at other models, more based on real-time information, to make it more just and more effective.
So we only have about less than 2 minutes left, or about a minute left. Yeah, but I know 2 of your projects have been in Time Magazine, Best Inventions of the Year, the Digital Water Pavilion and the Copenhagen Wheel. So we're on the radio. You can't show us what they look like, but just give us an idea of what those are.
Sure. Well, the Digital Water Pavilion was a project at World Expo. It's something we did at MIT, so that the theme of the expo was water, and we built a building, actually still operating in Spain, that's all made of water controlled digitally. And the Copenhagen Wheel was actually the beginning of our venture in micromobility, so led to super pedestrians, a lot of first research, and then startups dealing with micromobility. Micromobility, as you know, is part of what we are discussing, is how you cover the last mile. You don't need a big car. You can have a scooter, a bike, an e-bike, or something like a small vehicle in order to take care of last mile mobility.
Let's just hope the e-bike doesn't run you over on the sidewalk. Hey, Carlo, Ratti, it's really a pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for your time and your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. We should also mention we did before Esquire Magazine's Best and Brightest list, which is pretty impressive, Wide Magazine Smart list. So Carlo knows what you're talking about, I guess, is the bottom line. Thank you very much, Carlo, for being with us. Carlo Ratti.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Carlo Ratti directs the Sensible City Lab at MIT, founding partner of the International Design Office, Carlo Ratti Associati. Thank you again, Carlos, for being with us. Up next, we're going to open the lines to get your thoughts on some place called Western Mass. Do you care about Western Mass? Have you ever been there to Western Mass? Do you know where Western Mass is? Why bother to go in the first place? I think they feel that we're ignoring them up there in Western Mass. Jim, we're going to talk about that in a second. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Boston Public Radio, live local conversations every day, brought to you by listener support. Now it's your turn to keep the conversation going with an ongoing contribution in any amount. Please sign up as a sustaining member during our spring membership drive. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
Understand it, yeah.
Who are you talking to?
Ooh.
Exactly.
Whoops.
So here's the deal.
Talking to Jamie.
Second to last, how's Jamie? Good?
Jamie's well, very well,
good.
Yep.
So second, you can talk to him at 2 o'clock. Second to last day of the pledge drive. Today, the thank you gift, we're using new terminology borrowed from our colleagues. The thank you gift, if you give $10 a month. Oh, forget this. I forgot to say, Michael Curry from the NAACP and League of Community Health Centers, as he's walking off the set, says to me, I am donating $1,000 today in the name of you and Marjorie and Boston Public Radio.
Wow.
So, thank you, Michael.
Jim.
Talk about generosity.
You and I better up our donations.
He actually said he was doing your name, not mine, but I felt I should add it to the...
I mean, our donations to GBH.
Oh, that's a very good point. In any case, good for... Michael, thank you. It means a lot from anybody, particularly from somebody we have such respect for. That's great. Hopefully that's an inspiration for you to give whatever you can give. And if you're into this Babbel thing, which sounds great in terms of language learning, you get 1 year ad-free subscription to this language learning app, Babbel. It disappears at 2 o'clock as a thank you gift. And I am told from what I read, it's the best in the business. Marjorie tried it for a while and thought it was quite helpful. $10 a month or $120 all at once at 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org.
Actually, Jamie and I were talking a little bit about Babbel and about my Italian pronunciation.
He speaks Italian, like
very
fluently.
Impressed over that. He does speak Italian. He was commenting that I said associati the right way or something like that.
I said associates. I was humiliated.
Made me very proud of myself. But anyway, we want to thank everybody that has donated the Babbel that will help you pronounce your Italian and everything else for $10 a month as a sustaining member here at GBH.
That's correct.
It's a really neat program. It's a really neat program. Even if you're not going to go to Europe, it's great to be able to understand people speaking Spanish or speaking French or speaking Italian. It's really kind of fun. We want to thank William from Ipswich Anna in West Roxbury, Jana from Needham Heights, who listens to us every day at work, Jim, and Cheryl from Lenox. She listens from the Berkshires. We're going to talk about the Berkshires in just a couple of seconds, so stay tuned, Cheryl from Lenox, and we will try to answer why no one gives the respect that they should to Western Massachusetts.
Not enough.
Well, people that live there, they're very fond of it, but they think that we're neglected. They're neglected in Boston. I think they have a point. Anyway, if you want to donate before 2 o'clock so we can get the credit, the number again is 888-897-9424 and gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Rumor has it that both Marjorie and I have actually been to this mythical place known as Western Massachusetts. We're going to spend the rest of the show talking about it off a Boston Globe editorial, I think this morning, about the region's untapped economic potential. What do you mean,
I was just agreeing.
Okay, but let's be honest.
It's untapped.
Many of us haven't been west of Worcester since our school field trip to the old Sturbridge Village. Are we missing out? Here in Eastern Mass, we have beaches, we have universities, we have theaters, pretty great dining scene, even our own casino, unfortunately. Am I missing anything? Because we also have unaffordable housing, crippling traffic, congestion, rising sea levels. Out there, they're the Berkshires, they're fabulous museums, there's a lot of open space. So, and if anyone can explain what "Here There Be Dragons" means, that would be great too. 877-301-8970. I think there are 4 questions. 1, do you know where Western Massachusetts is? Do you call it West Mass? Did you read that Alex Beam column?
Yes.
There was an attempt to rebrand it as West Mass.
Didn't go well.
That failed. Have you ever been there? You got to tell the truth. And if you have been there and you're not lying, we would like you to tell us what your favorite spot in Western Massachusetts is. Why don't we start that way so they don't think we're frauds? What's your favorite spot in Western Massachusetts?
Well, the reason I have a favorite spot is that I've been lucky enough to go up to Tanglewood to see the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and I got up there and I thought, my God, this is so beautiful. Why haven't I been here before? Even though I spent some time in Northampton, which I guess is in Western Massachusetts when I was in
You went to school there,
college.
as my daughter
I went to
did,
college there, there at Smith College.
Yeah.
But I think this is a piece that's a little old now that a woman wrote in the Globe, Alison LeBron. It pointed out that when Charlie Baker became the governor, he appointed a 175-member transition team, not a single member from Berkshire, Franklin, or Hampshire counties.
That's not fair. Did you read the whole column? We interviewed him about that, and he said, in all fairness, at the time of his ascension, he didn't know that the Berkshires were in Massachusetts. He thought they were part of New York.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the slightest.
I think, to be honest, a lot of us are confused about where the Pioneer Valley is. I mean,
You didn't even know what the Pioneer Valley was.
I wasn't sure where the Pioneer Valley was,
etc.
Or if it's surrounded by mountains, or if there are pioneers out there, or what exactly is going on.
Well, let me tell you some of that. First of all, Massamoka and North Adams.
Yep,
You ever been there?
No.
What do you mean it's great?
You say
You've
it's
never
great.
been there,
You
so
say it's
why
great.
don't you say
You've
it's
been
great?
there. I have been to the Norman Rockwell Museum up there.
And by the way,
that's pretty nice.
Another great thing, you and I, after the tornado, visited Munson. That was nice that day. Every house blown off. It was like the Wizard
Not
of
every
Oz.
House. It was a few houses.
Well, I'm just trying to make
God.
the point. Thank you.
Yeah.
877-301-8970.
There was a terrible tornado.
This is a rare opportunity to celebrate. Should we try to call it West Massachusetts to get a new thing going?
Or we could call it the Pioneer Valley.
Well, it's not all Pioneer Valley. It's
You and
just like
I
Springfield, etc.
Also broadcast from the parking lot at the Basketball Hall of Fame up there,
We
right?
did.
Yeah, we were out in the parking lot. Not sure why we weren't inside.
Can I tell you something also? When people sell short, for example, Springfield. I mentioned I was there many years ago for the Democratic State Convention. I was covering it for NECN. And I have to say, and I want to say this as carefully as I can, when I went out at night after the convention recess that day, many people think the best strip clubs in the eastern, no, really, in the eastern corridor here, there wasn't much else open, but I'm told since the casino came, it's a whole different deal.
Now, a texter says it's not West Mass, it's Weemaw. Have you heard that?
No, well, let's try that too. Weemaw. That'll catch on.
And a hint for your listeners, Western Mass does not start right outside of Route 128.
It doesn't?
No, it says art from West
That's
Bridgewater.
like that New Yorker cover about New York. How many people here, tell the truth, don't lie? Raise your hand if you've ever been to Western Massachusetts. You're lying, right?
Big,
No, it's
a big
actually
crowd.
that's pretty. No, it's not a big crowd. Do it again. Hold a second. It's like maybe 40%. I mean, that is pathetic.
Well, it's far out there. It's very far out there.
Congratulations to the 40% of you, by the way, but the others, they probably went to the casino. 877-301-8970. 8970 is the number. This Benjamin in Brighton, here's a guy who's been there. He said, I'm very familiar with Western Mass. My local camera store is in Waltham. Well, I'm afraid that's not quite Western Mass, Benjamin, but thank you.
I think we should play some sound from our former producer, Matt Shearer, who's now
he goes from our producer to the big star at BZ Radio.
BZ Radio's TikTok channel. And Matt Shearer, of course, has all the answers. Here he is.
Where does Western Mass begin?
Worcester.
That's not Central Mass?
One side's Western, the other side's Eastern. You don't have to find a Central.
Oh my God. I can't even give you, like, Western Mass, I don't even understand it as a concept.
Well, anything west of you is, if you're on the shoreline and someone's west of you, they could be a foot away from you and be west.
I'd say the Cape.
Good. Now, they really know their stuff. WEMA is what we're calling it now. 877-301-8970. The goal here is not to damn Western Mass. The goal here, in sort of advancing the theme in the editorial in the Boston Globe, we want to celebrate the best of Western Mass, and we hope you'll help us do it. Correct? You ever been to the Big Y, whatever that is?
I have never been to the Big Y.
That's
Jim.
like a
It's
country
supermarket
fair
or something?
No, isn't it a fair?
I don't
What's
know
that
what it
fair
is.
thing called out? Oops, Big E.
Whoops.
Sorry, Big Y is the supermarket.
Big Y.
Thank you, Hayden. That is really humiliating.
Yeah,
okay. The Big E, close enough.
Western Mass or West Mass or WEMA or Pioneer Valley. Karen from Newburyport. Are you in Western Mass? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Go ahead. Hello, Karen. What's up?
No. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
We're good. We're excellent. Thank you.
Good. I love Western Mass.
Yeah, me too.
It's terrific.
What part do you like the most?
It's got beautiful things to do.
Like what?
I like Williamstown area.
Great.
Williamstown.
Beautiful. That's it?
Yep.
That's
and
it?
they have great museums. Great museums. They have a lot of good hiking.
Yeah.
That's right.
A lot of good places to stay.
You ever been to Massmoka?
Yes, I have been.
Is that a spectacular facility? I mean, not only the art, the building, isn't it worth the trip just to see the museum?
It's awesome. It's so huge. It's unbelievable.
It is. Karen, that was an excellent start. Thank you. She's praising lots of great things in Western Mass. Thanks for doing that, Karen.
This poor woman in the story, but in the Globe says she was trying to call in Boston about we're talking to a receptionist in Boston about some problem she was having, and she said she was from Great Barrington, and the receptionist told her Great Barrington doesn't exist.
No, is that really what she said?
She had to fight to convince her that Great Barrington doesn't exist. I've been through Great Barrington many times because my kids used to go to a Y camp up there. Yes.
Oh, was that Beckett?
No,
Oh.
it was up in the, it was on the board. It's where all the states come together, actually. New York, Massachusetts, and Vermont, I guess.
Or
Is that
Connecticut or
correct?
something? I don't
No,
know.
Connecticut's down here.
Whatever.
Yeah, they all come together. It was
A lot of
at
states.
YWCA camp.
Wait, you're
and they
talking
had-
about in WEMA? Is that what you're talking
It was
about?
in WEMA. It was near Great Barrington, which is an adorable little place.
Yeah.
And this story also points out, this is unbelievable.
What's this?
That the Massachusetts Turnpike begins in Boston at exit 24, and it ends in Sturbridge at exit 9. But everything west of Sturbridge, which is about 80 miles, is off the radar. It's as if in the eyes of Beacon Hill, the pike passes Interstate 84 and plunges into a black hole.
Wait, what year was this?
They don't have the overhead traffic cams, they claimed. Now, this is older. It's from 2016, 2015,
Well, that was
actually.
9 years ago.
Well, I don't know. Have you seen any overhead traffic cams?
Yes, I've seen many of
Beyond
them.
84?
Yes, I have.
And it is true. Once you get beyond 84, Jim, it's like you're really out in the boondocks.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we
It's
going?
like Deliverance. Is that what you're saying? No, we got to take a break, Marjorie. We'll get to you, Judy,
Okay,
in a
Judy, Rhode
second.
Island. Hold on, because I have a discussion
We're
to
so
have with you
excited
about
about
Rhode Island.
this.
We're listening. You're listening, rather. I'm not listening. I'm talking.
Well, you
to
are.
Boston Public
That's a
Radio,
very good point,
89.7
actually.
GBH. We're broadcasting
Good
live from the
distinction.
Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Quick break, right back.
It's time to support Boston Public Radio on GBH. Listener contributions pay for the program and keep it on the air. You don't have to give much to make a difference. Please make a difference by giving now at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
So listen to this. Here are a couple of people who are kind enough to donate. David and Linda are from Westminster. Jim and Marjorie have upset my life by stealing my middays. We listen every day and really enjoy the show. Parentheses, even Jim. Next one, Nancy from Foxborough. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder are great, especially Marjorie. I mean, really? 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Whether you're giving because you love Marjorie and you tolerate me or not, we hope you give 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. It is the penultimate, I love that word, penultimate day of this. Does that mean the day before the end?
I don't know when it ends.
I think penultimate. It ends tomorrow. Tomorrow's the final day. So it is the penultimate day of, what do you mean, okay? Of the pledge drive.
Okay, penultimate day of the pledge drive.
I
That's
said
very
that,
good.
yeah.
I think people relate to people that can't pronounce words. That's why I'm very popular with the listeners, Jim.
Maybe they just don't like me.
That
That's
could be
very
true.
possible.
Peggy from Gloucester says, listening to Jim and Marjorie since they were on another station, not to be named, they are an addiction. And Kathy from Winchester says, Jim and Marjorie have me glued to the radio, love the show. This makes me feel really good. You know, it's always really nice to hear these nice listener comments. And these are some of the people that have donated to GBH, because we have a fund drive obviously going on right now. This is the penultimate day of the fund drive. Yep. And until 2 o'clock, and 2 o'clock only, we have this wonderful gift. It is the $10 a month subscription to Babbel. And if people don't know, it's kind of this language app that you can, on your computer, your desktop, smartphone, whatever, you can learn another language. It's really effective in helping you learn that language. It's the crucial things. You're not going to be fluent, but you're certainly going to use.
That's not true.
Well, you can be fluent if you spend enough time with it. But if you're going overseas, you plan a trip or something like that, you want to be able to have the regular, you know, hello, how are you, where's the bathroom kind of thing.
Can you explain what you explained before? Because I wasn't clear on this. We speak and other people listen. Is that what you were saying?
That's correct.
That we don't listen.
I am not listening to GBH Radio.
Because you're speaking.
Because I am talking. That's correct.
I got that clear now.
So they have this 12-month subscription, and in 12 months you can probably learn a lot of a language.
Yeah, sure.
That is only until 2 o'clock, and we do like to get the credit. Well, I like to get the credit here during the time of our show. No offense to Jared and the Culture Show, but really, I think you should give it to us. That's what I think. 888-897-9424. gbhnews.org is where you can give discreetly. I want to also thank the other people: Stephanie from Attleboro, Nancy from Foxborough, Virginia from Plymouth, Mark from Martinez. I don't know where that is.
Whatever.
Anyway, thank you for donating
nice to have
us.
you anyway. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH. Marjorie is generally very negative, I know that. And so we decided today to offset that by being very positive about WEMA. Is that what we call it now? Western Massachusetts. We were inspired by this Globe editorial, something about economic potential in Western Mass that needs to be realized. And it's a great place to go. By the way, you know what's really nice about Western Mass? I've lived in mostly large states, Pennsylvania, New York, etc. It only takes a couple hours to get to the, 2.5 hours plus to get to the farthest reaches of Massachusetts in any direction from Boston.
But
it's
now
actually very wonderful.
Now we're going to talk to Judy from Rhode Island, which is a teeny tiny state, where they tried to get a new slogan a few years ago, you know, for Rhode Island.
The calamari thing?
No, not the calamari thing. Calling Rhode Island cooler and warmer, a rebranding campaign.
I didn't get that. We asked Governor Raimondo about that. I don't think she liked it either.
But anyway, Judy from Rhode Island, what do you think about Western Mass?
Hey, Judy.
You know what? My first indication when I heard you were talking about this was, please don't tell anybody about the Berkshires because it's my happy place, and I don't want anything to change about it.
It's a little selfish, don't you think?
Okay. What do you like about the Berkshires, Judy, from Rhode Island?
As soon as I go into the Berkshires, there's a sign that says, "Welcome to the Berkshires," and that's where I just exhale.
Yeah, what's your favorite spot in Western Mass there, Judy?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay, good. Now let me ask you one more thing. Since
somebody already did say it.
It was Tanglewood, I assume, right?
No.
Spell it backwards.
All right, to be honest, it's Williamstown.
Williamstown is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, Judy, do you think you could get to the point where you could start referring to Western Mass as WEMA? Could you do that and sort of integrate it? Never. Okay. No. Well, that's sad. Judy, thank you for your call. We appreciate your love of the Berkshires. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Judy. I'm being reprimanded by one of the texters. Says one does not go up to Western Massachusetts,
what do you do?
Marjorie.
You go down?
One goes over.
Oh, over?
That's what the texter says. Up is north, down is south, over is east and west.
That's a good point.
It's very embarrassing to get this stuff wrong. I thought it was up. Isn't it?
Yeah, no.
Isn't it north a little bit? It's north and west.
No, not really.
No, it's over.
It's west.
Okay,
kind of thing,
it's west. There you
We're
go.
east, they're west.
Okay.
Up is like New Hampshire. You're going to New Hampshire, you're going up. You know what I mean?
A lot of people like
You're going
Bash.
to Florida, you're going down.
A lot of people like Bish Falls. Have you heard of that?
No.
Yeah, well, apparently that's a great swimming place, and there's no swimming until the Rangers leave. I'm not sure what that means. But a lot of people are mentioning Tanglewood. A lot of people are mentioning the botanical gardens up there in Western
But
Massachusetts.
we're mentioning the more effete portions. We love Tanglewood and we love Massamoka.
Well,
but
there's a casino in Springfield.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, it's very appealing. I stayed there one night when I don't know, I was picking up my kid in spring.
I guess it's not Bish Bash.
One of the nicest parts of the casino is getting to bed, walking to your room at like midnight and passing like 190-year-olds smoking cigarettes with a one-armed bandits. It's really quite lovely.
Listen to this.
What?
There are only 22 state reps and senators west of Interstate 495.
Well, how many do they want?
So Western Massachusetts is not well represented.
Well, it's because they don't have as many people.
Please pronounce Amherst without the H, as Amherst is not.
First of all, I've never heard that. Who said that? I've never heard that.
One of the texters. We're getting criticized.
Well, they're wrong.
Texters are taking
it
us
is
to task.
Amherst. It is not Amherst. It is not Amherst. Is it Amherst?
It's Amherst.
No,
Amherst.
well, okay.
It's not. Did you call it Amherst?
It is Amherst.
No, I think it's Amherst.
Okay, fine. And in
Bill
Shrewsbury.
from Bridgewater says Western Mass does not start to get to the Golden Banana. Then you head west on the
Golden
Pike.
Banana is
That's
gone.
in Saugus,
It was
isn't
a
it?
strip club on the North Shore where I went with Marjorie because there was actually, it's a horrible story. Someone was murdered and Marjorie was too scared to go by herself. I went with her and then I was too scared to go in when we got there. So really, it got
It worked out well.
very, very complicated. And in Shrewsbury, you are next on Boston Public Radio. What's going on?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi there.
From Western
Oh!
Massachusetts, and I lived in Boston, met my husband, and all my in-laws kept asking me was, how many cows do we own? And I am from Springfield.
What am I missing in Springfield? I don't want to be unkind. What am I missing in Springfield? You know, it's the only police department in America that even Donald Trump put into like receivership. Do you know that?
Yeah. Listen,
Whatever.
At this stage, you're not missing much.
Okay. Thank you. That's a hell of a recommendation, Ann. Thank you. What else do you want to say good?
No. Well, everything else everybody else has mentioned, but Western Mass is so peaceful and beautiful. Once
Very
you get
peaceful.
down to Springfield.
It is peaceful.
Yeah.
This connection's horrible, Ann. We got to let you go. That was a great call, though. By the way, John, somebody, texts and says there's a dance studio. We're aware of this performance space in Beckett called Jacob's Pillow, Heaven on Earth.
Yep.
By the way, that woman we met, who's the lead dancer for the London Ballet or something, is performing it. Remember her? We met her at the
I do. I mean, she was a big deal.
The Gardner thing?
One of the texters, Cynthia from Bolton, says west of Quabbin is Western Mass.
Where's Quabbin?
I guess it's in Western Mass.
Is Quabbin the reservoir where
close to Western Mass?
Where a bunch of towns like totally disappeared, never to be seen again?
They were all.
That's
somebody
exciting.
did I think we did it right here
Somebody
at GBH.
did
Didn't we do a
Who
great
did that,
documentary
Jamie?
about
Can you
that?
check it out?
Yeah,
We don't know.
all the houses, they were lost there. They flooded the whole thing.
horrible.
Now, a texter
Wherever it
says
is.
he remembers, Jen, you saying Greenfield. Where the hell is Greenfield? It's not even Massachusetts. The texter said, I was very offended. I love you both. I'm fine not having us publicized. We have a gem here in Greenfield, but I can visit Cambridge anytime.
Can I respond to that person? Where the hell is Greenfield? Greenfield, I think,
It's near
is the
Northampton.
last, either North, no, it's not.
It's in the
either
Pioneer
North
Valley.
Adams or Greenfield. Isn't that the last community you can get to and still be in Massachusetts? Is
Yeah.
that right or not?
Somebody just sent me a map of Massachusetts to show that Western Mass is not up.
No, it is sort of west.
Andover
It
is up.
True.
Pittsfield.
Here's
That's
another
thing.
person.
Why would you name a town Pittsfield? That's really tough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How about Braintree? I mean, if all you're talking about, really. Okay.
That's a good point. Braintree.
Brendan in
Yeah.
Sturbridge, what's your deal? This is a little out of control here, but go ahead. Brendan, what's your
Tim,
deal?
Marjorie, I just finished churning some butter. I heard you all having this conversation. I figured I'd call in after doing my farm work here.
Churning butter. Churning butter?
You won't believe. I was churning butter last night in Cambridge, actually, so I can totally relate to that.
Wait a minute. You're joking, I assume.
Who cares?
I am very much joking.
Okay.
I'm sure you got some
Just
good
checking.
churned butter there, Jim. Maybe
Okay.
not as good as we have out here. But I wanted to call in and say, so I lived in Dorchester for 10 years. We've been in Sturbridge for 4-ish years.
Oh.
And I got to tell you, most days driving downtown from Dorchester would actually take me longer than it does coming down the Mass Pike here from central, almost Western Mass. So we bought out here because it's, we got a house with a yard and a good school system. Wanted to stay in Boston, but it was too pricey, and we're loving it out here. And it's interesting how I grew up on the South Shore, and the connotation's always been Western Mass is so far away. When I told my family and friends I was moving to Sturbridge, I might as well have said Kentucky. But talking to colleagues and friends in other parts of the country, when you tell people you live an hour outside of Boston and they're from California, they're like, "Oh, you're in the suburbs, right?"
Exactly.
Here in Massachusetts, it's Kentucky. So I always thought that was an interesting distinction. But folks who are listening, who want to live in a great part of the state, great schools, great outdoors activities, great affordability, come on out to Central.
Now, Brendan, I have a question. Do they have the traffic cams on the Mass Pike west of Sturbridge yet? Are they there?
Question.
I don't know. I'm right off of 84. I haven't noticed them, but I also haven't paid very close.
Could you do me a favor? Can you go out and check them out and call us back in a couple of minutes, Brendan? After you finish churning the butter, call us. Or call
Sturbridge is
Margie
very
at
nice.
home or something.
Sturbridge Village.
Brendan.
Kids all love Sturbridge Village.
You've never been there.
Absolutely. We drove.
Raise your right hand.
When I was in school, we
No,
went to a
she is
field trip
lying.
up to Sturbridge Village.
What was
Yes,
there?
we did.
What was there, Marjorie?
It was a village. There were little houses, and little people.
Churning butter, eh?
That's right. They were churning butter.
We're really helping Western Mass, let me tell you.
We gotta take a
They're
quick
bored
break.
of tourism. We're saying, let's hire Jim and Marjorie. They are really helping us out.
We'll be right back.
Think about it. For 3 hours every day, you get to hear thought-provoking conversations on local, national, and international issues for free. It only happens with your support, so please support your Boston Public Radio listening by calling 888-897-9424 or giving online at gbhnews.org.
So we get some really nice comments from listeners, and I don't like to be self-serving here, but I'll read them anyway.
Okay, good.
Virginia from Plymouth says, I drive over 600 miles a week. I started getting too fidgety, changing radio stations all the time to find music I liked. I discovered Jim and Marjorie's show, become a fan, listen to it now every day. Thank you, Virginia. And $10 a month is a bargain to be entertained for 3 hours a day. Thank you very much for that kind remark. Mark from, I'm not sure, but he says, I'm a big fan of Jim and Marjorie. I listen every morning, 8 to 11.
Well, we're not
Everyone,
on 8 to 11. Other than that,
that's a problem.
That's our best. Actually, that is probably the time we're at our best.
Here's why. Because he's in California.
Oh.
He is in California. So he listens to us live in California, which would make us on from 8 to 11.
That's a good point.
I thought he was listening to the wrong show and
Probably.
mistook us
Not
for
the
somebody
wrong
else.
show, a different show.
Different show.
Yeah.
I appreciate the range of topics, excellent guests, e.g. Chuck Todd, and the lighthearted approach to the often crazy nature of the day's news. So those are some of the lovely comments that make us make our day, actually. And we do appreciate, it's an effort to call up and donate.
How do you
Think about
give?
parting your money. Here's how you give, Jim.
How do you give?
It's 8. Why are you interrupting me?
How do you give?
888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
And let me tell you, our thank you gift, you have two choices today till 2 o'clock. Either for $10 a month to $120 all at once, you get the Babbel for a year, the the ad-free subscription to this great language learning app, and explain to people what the alternative gift is for the $10 a month for $120, Marjorie. What's the alternative? You don't want the Babbel. What else can you get for $10?
You can get, I don't know. What can you get?
Brendan will give you butter churning lessons out there in Sturbridge for $10 a month or $120 all at once. By the way, this disappears, meaning the offer, the Babbel thing, disappears at 2 o'clock. But don't wait. I mean, it's ridiculous already. We're almost done the pledge. Tomorrow's the last day. If you're going to give. You call 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. I am telling you, when it's over, we get reports about how everybody at the station did. I don't mean broken down by show. It's not competitive like Marjorie makes it seem like it is. And it really, when people hear what people have written, how generous they've been, it means a huge amount to all of us. Virtually all of us on these shows, behind the mic, on the mic, work really hard, and it means the world to us. So if you're going to give and haven't yet, please call 888-897-9424 or just go to gbhnews.org.
We have a lot of nice comments from people.
We do?
Yes, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. We are back.
Sort of.
Yeah.
this is Boston. What do you mean? Yeah, this is Boston Public Radio. Jim and Marjorie, and we're at the library. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. People
do,
are saying,
fine.
how can you forget Alice's Restaurant in Pretty Good Barrington? People are
We had
saying
Arlo Guthrie on last year.
Arlo Guthrie and also James Taylor, the great Sturbridge to
Oh, is he
Boston
great?
song. You know, that's
He's done a few others
Yep.
too.
Mass Mocha is where I spent my baby moon. Porches Inn is so great. They have a year-round swimming pool. Canyon Ranch in Lenox. All these things are wonderful.
How great was James Taylor, by the way? It's the first time I ever met him. Was he like a mensch? Was he like a smart, focused, wonderful human being? Didn't you think so? I loved him. I really was impressed.
Oh, yeah, he was great.
Just
Well,
great.
his music is great, too, and his voice is still
But I mean,
fantastic.
he's a great person, too, which is really
Fred
great.
from Newton is a
What
little
is it?
hostile here to
What's she
Western
saying?
Mass. This is Fred from Newton.
Oh, Fred, sorry.
He says Western Mass needs to be careful or we'll flood their cities and turn them into water reservoirs as they did at the Quabbin.
Where is Quabbin?
That's not very nice, Newton. It's on the, Fred from Newton, that's on the border of Western Mass, I've been told.
I don't think so.
Yes, or the Pioneer
Jamie's
Valley.
looking it up.
Mhm.
We should know.
Mary,
Can we take a call
Whoops,
or what?
that's not Mary. Paul in Somerset. What do you
Right.
think, Paul?
Hi, Paul in Somerset. Paul, say something.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I've got to take offense to people that say Worcester and Springfield are Western Massachusetts. That's
Springfield?
Central
Wait.
Mass.
Springfield is Central Mass?
Springfield is Central Mass. Pittsfield, Lenox, that's Western Mass.
Says who?
And I know
Says
because
Paul from Somerset.
I'm a...
Yeah, you're what? Go ahead, Paul.
I've been a road rep for years,
Yeah.
and for many years, my Mass and Central Connecticut,
Yeah.
which was Worcester, Springfield, and Hartford.
Yeah.
That's Central Massachusetts.
Okay, well, I mean, it's really hard for me to sound like a wonderful person, Paul, but it's really hard for me to accept that Springfield. I mean, Worcester, I get. Worcester is like sort of in the center of the state. Springfield is like way out there. No, I mean, it's like way out. You go to Springfield, and then you turn right, and you go to Holyoke or one of those places, right, or Northampton. Yes.
Centric, that it's crazy.
What? Say it again.
Massachusetts is a long state.
It is. Okay, you're upset with this, and I apologize. I am Springfield's Western Mass to me, but I will take it under advisement. Thank you, Paul, for your education.
Amy from Georgetown wants to tell you, Jim, that there's a great bank of superchargers at the Big Y in Lee, in case you find yourself out that way, so you don't have to worry. And
By the way, most superchargers are at supermarkets. Do you know
yeah,
that?
and somebody else
I mean,
is pointing
yeah.
out all the great colleges: UMass Amherst, Amherst College, Williams College, Smith, from Shoshana, that's formerly of Amherst.
Why'd you tell people why you left Smith, by the way, after 1 year?
Well, because it's an all-women's college,
And?
I was having difficulty getting a date.
Because you're heterosexual.
So I moved. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I moved. It was all women. So I went to California. You know,
Did you get a date out there?
Head west. I did.
How'd that go?
Well, I got to try surfing, so that was kind of fun.
That was with a nude boyfriend
It
in your
wasn't a
friend's
nude
book.
boyfriend. It was not
Yeah,
a nude-
her college
you make
roommate.
all this up.
Excuse me, I'm talking now.
We're making all
her
this up.
college roommate is a best-selling
Yeah.
author.
Yeah,
What's
that's
her name?
right. Her name is
What's
Iris Krasno.
Iris Krasno.
Yeah.
And she wrote a book about
She did not.
Marjorie and her
Yeah.
Hawaiian boyfriend.
He was from
by his
Hawaii.
Woody, and I mean his car.
He was a really good surfer.
And they were both naked.
Okay.
If you get the book,
Not true.
that is totally true. I read the
Okay.
book. Let
Okay.
me tell you, the sales are going to explode, right?
Okay.
And their pictures.
We
too,
are
actually.
done. Thank you for listening to another edition
Thank
of
you.
Boston Public Radio, and thank you for coming down to the Boston Public Library.
Is that guy right?
the thing tomorrow, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
And thanks to everyone who's already given during our spring membership drive. And if you have yet to give, well, it's almost over. Please make your contribution to GBH and help to pay for your future listening. Really easy to do online at gbhnews.org or by calling us at 888-897-9424. Good afternoon. I'm Mark Cohen. He's Zach Finn.
And you have just 8 minutes left here to support GBH at $10 a month and receive your 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. You can study one language. You can study multiple languages. Your subscription provides access to all 14 languages that Babbel has to offer. So sign up as a sustaining member to GBH at $10 a month. Ask for your 12-month subscription to Babbel. You can give $120 all at once if you like. But again, that deadline is coming up fast here at 2 o'clock. 8 minutes to go. Online at
starts Linz Symphony with Ukapeka Saraste conducting the Scottish Chamber Orchestra.
WCRB programs exist because of you. And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society. Guest conductor Masaki Suzuki and 4 incredible soloists join forces with the H&H Orchestra and Chorus to infuse new life and light into Bach's choral masterpiece, his B minor Mass. April 5th and 7th at Symphony Hall. Tickets at handelandhaydn.org.
Classical Radio Boston is WCRB-FM 99.5 HD1 Lowell, Boston, WGBH-FM HD2 Boston, WCAI-FM HD2 Woods Hole, WJMF-FM Smithfield, Providence, and at classical.org.
Just about 2 o'clock. Hi, Greg Farisi here with you on this cold and cloudy Tuesday afternoon here in Boston. If you stick around today, we're going to enjoy Brahms' Academic Festival Overture